Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of The Tribunal. I'm joined today by my boys, but this is The Tribunal, and I need to officially welcome them in. So, I first welcome into the stream Echo Chamberlain, who is still recovering after having recently suffered a bout of Stuckmanization following an accidental viewing of a Chris Stuckman video. During his bout of Stuckmanization, Echo released a video criticizing both himself and other YouTubers for saying bad things about stuff. During the video, he said, quote, "Things take effort. People work hard on them. I mean, the Germans made it all the way to Stalingrad. Do you think that was easy? But people criticize that invasion all the time. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all." Hard things, Echo.
No one gives the Nazis any credit for their logistical skills or anything else. It's all just negative, negative, negative. Just negative Nellies out there the whole time. Unbelievable.
It's just it's every channel. Every channel, it's just anti-German, It's like, what's wrong with these people? You know.
It's I know, and YouTube will even censor them because of bad words. Like, what have we even come to now? Unbelievable. I like that Jean-Michel Jarre kind of spooky music you've got in the intro. That's kind of cool.
That is Aquatic Ambience. It's from a Donkey Kong game, Super Nintendo.
Yeah, right.
Apparently, it took the composer 5 weeks to program that into the game.
Right. It was so. For this, like, what role do I have? Am I being impaneled onto the jury? Like, what's the?
Yeah, we're judging all of these movies. We'll also be judging the worst Oscar, and you're one of the 3 judges. This is important stuff, Echo.
All right, I'll do my best.
All right. I now welcome onto the stream Greg Owen, a self-described Stuck maniac who, following his conversion to the Stuckmanian school of film criticism, has posted reviews of Birth of a Nation, Triumph of the Will, and Women Talking, in which he refused to address the negative aspects of the movies, instead focusing on the positives, such as the nice horses in Birth of a Nation, the excellent production design in Triumph, and the credits font in Women Talking. Please welcome Greg Owen.
I'm so glad to be here, you guys. As a matter of fact, I'm working on another video right now in praise of the Marvels. I mean, there's just so much to love about this movie. The CGI was incredible. I don't want to give away all the secrets, but I'm just telling you, it's a praise fest. I'm so excited. I also want to salute you for demonetizing the stream at only 90 seconds by praising the Nazis. So excellent work on that one. I mean, Distortion 2 doesn't even have you beat. This is incredible.
Yep. Well, all of my live streams are demonetized anyway, so we don't have to worry about that.
Birth of a Nation had diversity in it. It had white people and it had black people, so balance, you know.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. I mean, it was an early. Really, it was a trendsetter. You know, it was like 100 years ahead of its time in terms of its diversity.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to be talking about the Oscars movies here. So I did my Razzie stream, and now I'm going to do an Oscar stream. Fortunately, this time I have other people, by the way. Oh, that was great, wasn't it?
It was one of my prime reasons for watching.
Yeah, I even time-stamped it, so if you want to see me trying to get over the hiccups on live stream, and it was just me, I couldn't like back out and let somebody else take a stream. It was just me. So if you want to see me combat that, it's actually time-stamped in my Razzies video, so you can go check that out.
The dangers of live streaming.
Yeah, my camera always does this until I stop it and then bring it back. It should be okay now. Okay, so yeah, we're going to go over the Oscars movie and just give our opinions on them and maybe talk about some notable absences at the end, if we have time, which we may not, because we've got to get through 10 movies here. Okay, so let's just get started. So the first one we're going to talk about is Barbie, really just because this one's been talked to death, and I don't think we'll spend too long on it. But I basically felt that it earned its spot in the Oscars nominations for reasons I'll get into in a bit, but I'll let Echo take over for now. Echo, do you think that it should have been up for a Best Picture nomination?
It's more of a popcorn film, in my view. It's more a kind of celebratory party kind of film with some serious elements in it. So I can see how it would get in there, but I also see how it's good prime evidence for how there's too many Oscars in. Really, the short list is a long list now of 10 films.
Yeah.
So I get the impression that if it was down to 6 or 7 films, it probably wouldn't have been there. But you know, I guess you kind of the flip side of that is that it gets the accolade of being nominated, but it also gets the flip side being that it kind of gets dissed continuously by not having these people nominated for best actor or best director, and then it's the British equivalent awards where it gets snubbed again. So that's the flip side of it.
Yeah. That's the. It's important that you mentioned that there are too many movies nominated, because I think that there should be at least 4 of these movies shouldn't be in here. Not necessarily Barbie. I think Barbie's maybe like it does have some major achievements, such as women actually want to see it. That's not a small thing in modern Hollywood, because they seem to have forgotten how to make movies for women. And so it's excellent in some other ways. Like the OST is really good. I really enjoyed the Barbie OST. The production design's excellent. Cinematography is usually very nice. Ryan Gosling's excellent. So at its heights, at its peaks, it's really brilliant stuff. The problem is it has some troughs and some low points which really drag it down. It's quite a schizophrenic film in terms of quality, and overall, I think it makes it quite bad, especially with the ending being as bad as it is. Greg, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't even agree that it really belongs in the nominations. I mean, obviously, I agree with Echo that there's 10 is way too much, and right now 10 is a problem because I'm trying to watch them all so I can make a video about it, and it's a real pain in the butt. I wish there were fewer, but I don't think that it even belongs in a top 10. I think that it feels like more of a pity pick. Just because politically, if you don't put it in there, I mean, just all hell will be raised, right? So they absolutely had to put it in. I don't think they ever had a choice, but I think that you're correct that like its supporting elements, the cinematography, the set design, all of those things were great, except that as a movie, it's so much worse than the sum of its parts. And what's interesting about Barbie, when you look at like online discourse about it, Barbie is like, I've seen it described as like a Rorschach test, or which you know says more about you than about it. And I also think that I can't think of the right word for it, but it basically, the Barbie movie is whatever you want it to be, and that's not in a good way. Like some movies leave themselves open-ended for interpretation, and that's what they're trying to do. But Barbie wanted to be a lot of things, and it didn't stick the landing on any of those things. So I think as a movie, as a film, it's just not cohesive. And so it didn't really achieve much of anything. And as far as women wanting to go see it, I think that if there's an Oscar for PR, they should win, because the ad campaign, the bait and switch that was pulled with the commercials and everything, they deserve top marks. I mean, there should be a Mad Men sequel about whoever made that ad campaign, because they were brilliant. But no, I don't think it belongs in the best picture category at all.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the ad campaign, because I just did want to raise briefly, and this is the other thing that I did like about Barbie. I also like that it made so much money because the theaters were doing shit at the time because of all the flopbusters during the summer. So the Barbenheimer meme really helped out the theaters, those 2 movies. But one thing I did like about Barbie as well, not the movie, but the marketing campaign, as deceptive as it was, it did help to kill fan-bait marketing as a mainstream tactic of Hollywood. So it basically started, I think, with Ghostbusters 2016 fan-bait marketing, and it doesn't seem to work anymore. The last attempt that was made of it was for a movie called The American Society of Magical Negroes, and they did basically a race bait kind of attempt at fan baiting, and the Woman King famously did the same thing. It tried to fan bait, well, kind of rage bait, white rage on Twitter, and then it was hoping that black people would rush to the defense, and it could kind of create this mini culture war and benefit from that. And I think Magical Society of American Negroes, or whatever it's called, that was trying to do the same thing, but no one cared. Absolutely no one cared. It was a flash in the pan. Even criticism videos about it didn't get many views. It was a total failure. And then the backlash to Velma as well. Velma went with a very deliberate fan-bait trailer. It even made a trailer in which it specifically called out, it strawmanned what they would have regarded as internet trolls and called them out. And it was a complete disaster. So I do think that fan-bait marketing has gone by the wayside, and we're not going to see much of it anymore. Do you think I'm being too optimistic on that?
No, I think you're right. I think when that actress came out for The Woman King, and she literally said, if you don't come out and see this film, then you are sending a message that Black women cannot helm a major Hollywood production. So in other words, by your negligence or omission refusing or not spending your disposable income in the marketplace of entertainment to come see this film, then you're kind of socio-politically liable in some way, or should feel some kind of guilt for which you should atone, which is astonishing. But Barbie, they turned it into a pleasant tease. They said, if you love Barbie, you'll enjoy this, and if you hate Barbie, you'll also enjoy this. So it stokes a bit of curiosity. It's a kind of fun little elbow in the ribs, and so it's kind of, that was a cool tease, and it was a good way to do it, and it worked. And if you see the chart for the year of ticket sales, and the spike with Barbie, and by extension Oppenheimer, is gigantic. So yeah, it did help save the industry, probably more than Top Gun.
I'm interested to see how that affects other toy movies, however, because I mean, it was brilliant marketing. The whole, like, if you like it, if you hate it, it just sort of, it evoked this idea that it's going to be a big fun satire. We're going to, meta comedy. We're poking fun at ourselves. So, I mean, come on, we're making a movie about a Barbie doll. How serious can we be? But then, obviously there were very overt political tones and everything, and the movie itself just isn't that great. It's really not worth a rewatch. And I'm interested to see how that's going to do. Like, if future toy movies will try to take that same tack, and if they do, is it successful? Because there are over a dozen toy movies in the works right now. I mean, Barbie, the day after Barbie blew up at the box office, so many toy movies got greenlit, and they're all, I mean, there's an 8-ball movie being worked on right now, Magic 8-ball movie. So I'm interested to see how it affects the marketing for those things.
They're all going to be terrible, every single one of them.
Absolutely.
They'll all be awful. I mean, the one thing they'll do for Barbie is they'll make Barbie look good. Like 8-ball and God, what's that card game called?
Uno.
Uno. They've got an Uno movie coming. These things are going to make Barbie look like a masterpiece. Like, that's anyway. We're not gonna spend too much more time on Barbie.
One thing I do want to say is I really like Greta Gerwig. I like the trajectory of her career, starting off with the Lady Bird, a sweet, absolutely charming film. Giving you a window into other people's lives that are sort of out of your own, and to be able to get those insights was lovely. I thought that Little Woman, she did probably the best adaptation of that. I thought that had charm to it as well. So I'm happy for her. I'm glad for her. Anyone have any? Oh no, have we lost Lisbeth? Oh, there he is. I thought he'd gone into some sort of seizure at the sheer audacity of me making that remark.
How dare you praise her?
Yeah.
Dimitri,
still here?
It's going to be interesting to see where she goes from there too, because you're right. She's so successful that I think whatever her next project is, she's got full control. I mean, any studio is going to throw as much money as she wants. It's going to be interesting to see where she goes next off of that.
Yeah. That's probably not a good thing, because I think Greta Gerwig's a real talent in terms of her technical directing ability. Like, she is a genuinely good director. She's not one of these diversity hired directors whereby it's a female behind the camera and she just should not be there. A very recent example of that was Madam Web. It was because Madam Web was about women, you have to have a female director. That's how it works in Hollywood now. I call it identity hiring. The identity of the director has to match the identity of the on-screen characters. So it had to be a woman. And they got a woman who had never directed a movie before. I looked at her IMDb page, and she was involved with about 100 episodes of television over her career, which is quite a lot. You would imagine, even though she'd never made a movie before, it would have been better directed than Madam Web, because the direction in Madam Web is shockingly bad. But yeah, that's what identity hiring gets you, I suppose. Reasonably high budget. I mean, $80 million movie. It's not high budget relative compared to other Hollywood movies, but compared to TV, it would be high budget, especially when you look at the TV she's done. It's like afternoon British TV stuff, the kind of thing you would imagine gets filmed in an hour in some cases. But yeah,
she's interested in, I mean, her main themes of woman and womanhood, but it's not strident or in your face. It's in her previous films, it's like the wistful and the solemn little aspects of it that are really enticing and interesting to look at. The push and pulls between mothers and daughters, all that kind of stuff, and that's really interesting and can be poignant. And so I'm glad that she's there, and I'm glad she's succeeding. Yeah, but I don't want her to win the Oscar for this.
Yeah, but and she also would rather she wasn't writing these movies. I think the biggest problem with Barbie was the writing. The writing really let it down. So if she stepped back from that and just focused on her directing and let better people write the scripts, I think she could do some great stuff, but not if she's writing it. Okay, so we will move over to The Holdovers, which straight away I'll say this is another movie I don't think should be on here. Did either of you two see The Holdovers?
I did, yeah.
What do
I
you
have
think,
to
Greg?
recuse myself. I didn't see it.
I don't worry about it.
You know, I really liked it, and I think that I'm a little torn because on the one hand, I can't call it like this masterpiece of, you know, character study or emotion or whatever, but I think it's a really great film. I think that it's going to do. I think it's got a good shot of the Oscars because of the stuff that they did with the not only the filming but also the sets. They didn't build any of those sets. None of that movie was filmed on any kind of soundstage or whatever. So they found locations in Maine. I think it was Maine, to actually, you know, do all that stuff. I think there were 4 or 5 different schools that they filmed various parts of the movie in. So one school had the kitchen, one school had the gym, you know, yada yada. And then they also did, you know, a lot of interesting stuff. They filmed it in digital, but they treated it to give it this 70s look. You know, they found all the right decorations, all the right costumes, all that kind of stuff. So I think that points are going to go to it for that because of what they achieved visually there. But I also think that there was a lot of interesting character study going on. And one thing that I'm really in love with this movie for is not treating Paul Giamatti's character like a piece of shit, because he's a hermit. He's been living in this school as a professor for like 40 years. He went there as a boy, went to Harvard. There's some drama that happens. It's revealed in the movie. And then he goes back and he teaches at this place and he's living there. He doesn't really like people. Everybody hates him, but he's fine with that. And the movie doesn't ever do the thing where like he suddenly realizes, oh my God, being an introvert is the worst thing that could ever be. And I should be so nice to people and just get along with everybody and just put myself out there. The movie never really does that. And I appreciate that they don't call him wrong for it, but they do make him feel like he's kind of trapped himself and he's not really chasing his own dreams, which is not to interact with people and be a nice guy, but just to go write history about Carthage and you know, Greece and all this kind of stuff. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is a good movie. When I say it shouldn't be in here, what I mean is I think it's a good movie. I just don't think there's anything particularly special about it. I mean, you mentioned some of the interesting stuff they did visually, and you can really see that on screen. I didn't know that about it. And when you mentioned that, it really made sense to me because it does have the feel of a kind of older movie about it, not just in terms of its presentation, because it's a period movie. It's set in 1973, I think, or 1971, something like that. And it does have that feel about it as well. But just thinking about it, Paul Giamatti's the best thing about it, obviously. I think Paul Giamatti really helps to carry the movie. If you had just an ordinary actor in there, I don't think it would have been anywhere near as good.
Yeah.
I did like that he was playing a real character. So usually, I think the first movie that really did this well was Election in 1999. You know that movie with, what's her name? Reese Witherspoon?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That was, if you've seen that, that's a movie. Basically, the main theme of it is how men's dicks get them into trouble, and it's about a teacher and his colleague is fired for having sex with one of the students, and then he later tries to have an affair, and he gets in trouble for that, and he is meanwhile trying to sabotage this election that's going on. It's really good, and the main character in it is a teacher, and it feels like a real person. Whereas before that, you'd have had stuff in the 80s like The Breakfast Club, where the teachers are really just furniture. They're like little villains playing roles. They're not real people. And I don't know if Election was the first movie that did that, but it's certainly one of the first that I can remember where the teachers actually feel like human beings as opposed to just kind of an 8-year-old's conception of a teacher, like a person that lives in the school and teaches the kids and doesn't have a life outside of that. The Holdovers did well in that it didn't fall into cliche. You didn't have that cliched presentation of Paul Giamatti as just the evil teacher that needs to be overcome. Like he's an obstacle that needs to be overcome as part of the self-actualization of the students, as part of their growing up and their coming of age. It does have that coming of age aspect to it, whereby the kids are growing up, but at the same time, there's a very important character arc for Paul Giamatti, which I'll not spoil or anything like that. There's a part at the end where Paul Giamatti does something. I'd love to ask Greg about it, but I don't want to spoil the movie because I do think it's definitely worth watching. It's one of the few movies this year that I would actually recommend watching. I just didn't think it was anything special. And what I mean by that is, well, what's the difference between a movie that's great and a movie that's good? A movie that's good, it's very consistently solid scene to scene from start to finish, but it never really takes off. There's no single scene I can point to and say that's an amazing scene.
Yeah.
Or did you disagree, Greg? Do you think there are scenes in that movie does it reach peaks of brilliance at times?
No, I think it's pretty. It's like a I would give it like a 7 or 8 pretty much all the way through. I think it's one thing I like about it, and I didn't think I would like this, and I think it's just a sign that I'm getting older, is that I appreciate that it was slow without feeling boring, but it took its time, right? We didn't do a bunch of smash cuts. It felt, I want to call it cozy. It's a feel good movie. Obviously, there's not these massive revelations. I mean, the whole movie takes place over a 2-week period, so there aren't these life-shattering, huge character arcs. But it's a feel good movie. You're gonna smile a lot. There are some sad parts to it that are they're just sad enough to make the happy parts feel that much warmer and happier. But I agree. This is on my short list for ones that I think are up there. I think it's a great movie, but I have another one that I think should take the award home. So I don't see Holdovers doing it, but it's got a good shot.
Yeah,
Paul Giamatti
it
said in an interview that at the beginning of the film, his character has a very strong shtick, like that kind of carapace of a personality, and it's all about not wholeheartedly breaking that down, but kind of confronting that. And I like that idea. I like the idea of something more subtle, which isn't like a transformative character arc where they become rejuvenated about life in a way like that. But I am interested as I get older in that idea of people's shtick sort of being tested and broken down a little bit. So that might make me want to watch it.
Yeah, he really understands the character, and his performance is excellent because it's quite subtle. He's performing a character. He's performing a character who is performing a character. So in the movie, he's a teacher, but the teacher is kind of playing the role of the teacher with the stick up his ass. So his role is kind of like, Mr. Chamberlain, what are you doing at the back of the classroom? Come up here, please. That very put on personality to play the role of the stick in the mud teacher who's very strict. So he has that going on, and then that kind of slowly breaks down over the course of the movie as he develops his relationship with this kid. It's a pretty good movie. It's a good movie to hang out with and just think about. It is good.
Yeah, something. One other pro point for it is, I think adding the side character of Mary, who I'm looking up here, played by Divine Joy Randolph. She was a real star of the movie. I don't know what she's been in before. I've never seen her before, but she was excellent. And her being there it kept it from dragging, because otherwise it would just be the teacher-student conflict. This surrogate father, but he's not really. She brought in a lot of comic relief, and she brought in a lot of just that third perspective, oftentimes being like, hey, both of you are being assholes, and let's all just calm down. Her inclusion really, I think, brings it up more than just your standard feel good, drama comedy.
Yeah, I also love that they had her in it. If anyone's seen it, we're talking about the black actress, the fat black woman, the cook. She's really good, and that actress she was excellent in it.
I haven't seen the film, but it just in its broader contours, it seems to me like it's an American equivalent of a very English stereotype of the guy who feels that he was entitled to more and he's super intelligent, but is also trapped in a very small context, which is frustrating for him. From David Brent to Faulty Towers to Blackadder, that very same dynamic, it seems like an American equivalent of that.
There are aspects to it, and that's definitely part of it. The movie goes out of its way to show that his academic abilities really should be channeled to a higher level of education rather than a college. But it's a prestigious college as well, and he does have major character flaws, which would probably prevent him from succeeding at a university as well. So it's really up to the viewer to make that to figure that out. But it's a good movie in that it's not trying to portray him in necessarily a negative or positive light or praise him or character assassinate him. The character does have a lot of serious heavy character flaws.
Yeah.
All right. So for this next movie, I've talked about this a little bit, and I do want to be as objective with it as I can. So I'll just let Greg start. So Greg, what did you think of MAESTURBATRO?
You know what? That one's low on my list. I haven't seen it, unfortunately, because I've seen the trailer. I've seen a lot of talk about it, and I mean, it is. It's a bait movie. I mean, it's a period piece. It's about a well-known composer. He's real big in Academy circles. He's a gay guy. It's, you know, it's checking every single, and, you know, there's heavy prosthetics. We're going back and forth with the black and white. We're, you know, it's unless no, I'm not going to say that. That's not going to get me in trouble. No, there are only a few more boxes to check, and I'm going to watch it at some point before I make that video. It doesn't even look appealing. It has all the hallmarks of a bait movie, and I'm not excited about that one.
It is a awards bait. I mean, the hallmarks of, there was even a guy who did a video on this. He went through all the different aspects of the awards bait, and I think the ones he identified were, it has black and white sections. So if it has black and white sections, that's great because it's artsy. It's period. The Academy loves its period movies. When you look at the best Oscar winners, the best picture winners, it has on-screen homosexuality, which is always a plus. It's about a guy trying to not come to terms with his queerness. His wife is really trying to come to terms with it. Complex personal relationships. It has, it's a biopic. You know, the Academy historically has loved its biopics, so it's just trying to check every single box. It's pretentiously filmed and it's pretentiously stylized. Have you seen Maestro, Echo?
Well, in the Inferno of Dante's Divine Comedy, Dante is guided into the underworld of hell by the poet Virgil. And I think there's 9 circles where the wickedness gets worse and worse as you get down. But what I didn't expect is that in the lowest circle of hell, there's actually a trapdoor which takes you into a private viewing room where you can watch the film Maestro. So the weird thing is I kind of enjoyed it in a strange, dark, ironical way, because I went into it knowing I'm probably going to dislike this severely. And then I started watching it thinking it might actually be okay. And then to have my loathing of it confirmed within about a couple of minutes, I then felt a kind of warm glow of, oh, great, now I can just sit back and enjoy my loathing of this film. So that was my experience. It's got, just to add to that list, you've got the strong, independent, powerful, intellectual woman who's overshadowed by her powerful husband, and then that forms a terrible neuroses. One huge domestic set piece with a static master shot, which looks like it's a stage play. The beginning section where it's him as an old man in heavy prosthetic makeup, looking ridiculous, by the way. And then reflecting on his life, and then we go back in time. It was, I hated everything. Like Sarah Silverman comes on in the first minute, and I thought, oh my God, right, I've already lost me. It starts off and it's trying to be, in this black and white early youthful section, is trying to capture this ebullience of the social milieu and the times, and the dialogue is overlapping and flowing over it, over the top of each other to capture that youthful, sprightly energy and intellectual vivacity. But it just, even then they're trying to be naturalistic, it still actually sounds false and off key with this overlapping dialogue. You miss what a lot of people are saying. Then it has that horrific thing where their experience of life or their projections about themselves of the future merges into actual stagecraft drama with people dancing and twirling around and clicking their heels. And then it rushes through, and I appreciated that I'm watching the film Maestro, which is good for some reasons, but at no other point was I aware of anything else other than just watching the film Maestro. I had no sense of immersion. I had no sense of knowing who this character is. I had no sense of liking any of these people. The momentum, I had no sense of his actual appreciation of the music or the craft of it. I didn't care about Carey Mulligan's character at all. She meant nothing to me, and in the grand scheme of things, she's just not that important, but she had to be elevated in order to create a sense of drama. The prosthetics and makeup look kind of awful. His voice is 95% of the way there, but it still sounds too kind of glottal or nasal in a weird way, which is kind of off-putting. There's moments, of course, where the music speaks for itself and is kind of transcendent, but that's nothing to do with the film. That's just the sheer exquisite nature of the music itself. So yeah, just an Oscar baity, wanky kind of just gross film where someone who isn't up to the level of the material. So yeah, so I'm not a fan of Maestro, to put it shortly.
Yeah, I mean, this is Bradley Cooper trying very, very hard to impress way beyond his abilities.
That's right.
He's just not a very good director. He might be a technically capable director. He could maybe direct a movie in a very to make it just a normal functional way, but he's gone out of his way to try to be artsy and to prove that he's not just an actor. He's not just he doesn't just do comedy. He's not just the guy that makes you laugh in The Hangover. He's Bradley Cooper. He's a great auteur. And
so what that does is it creates a feeling of this great man and this great material, which is very serious and profound and complex. And all I had throughout the film was the feeling of this guy is not quite up to it, impinging and imposing into this world where he's not quite capable of rendering it properly. So that was my main, that was the main atmosphere of watching that film. Yeah,
and I compared it to overproduction on a song. And Echo, I know you've done some song, you've done some music, and you've done some recordings. So you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Overproduction is where you take a song, which might even be quite a decent song, and you just put way too much stuff on it. For example, so the vocal has way too much reverb. It's far too wet. There's too many effects on it. You could use a fairly nice acoustic guitar, but instead you just launch about 12 guitars on it with tons and tons of riffs, and they're all getting in each other's way. And the music's overarranged, and there's just way too much production on it. You're using far too many plugins. So you've got your reverb going. You've got 3 different kinds of distortion on every single guitar. And you could make do with just a nice wee drum track, but instead you throw 3 drum tracks on there, 2 of them programmed. And then you start panning shit all over the place. And the production, it's just massively overproduced. It's like, just let the song speak for itself. And that's very much the sense that I was getting from this movie. This movie is over-directed.
Yeah, I think that's a very good analogy. Yeah,
imposes itself on the viewer constantly.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. There's a set piece where they're having their gigantic argument, and it just feels like you're watching a stage play where people are just reciting fairly good dialogue, but not in a way that's remotely naturalistic. And it's weirdly top-heavy, where we've had maybe half an hour of him feeling youthful and ebullient and buoyant about life. And then the rest of the film, it's very abruptly him about looking back on life. We're already about less than a third of the way into the film. So it's kind of weirdly top heavy in that way as well.
Yeah. It's just that Bradley Cooper seems to want the audience to constantly ask questions. Like, and he even has this as a quote at the start. He says, great art is not supposed to answer questions. It's supposed to elicit questions. Something like that. He was quoting, Leonard Bernstein, and he seems to want to constantly elicit questions from the audience, such as, why did he choose that camera shot? Why are we looking at a still frame for 2 minutes during an argument? This is not very compelling, and the movement of the camera is not keeping up with the emotion of the scene. Things like that, and he's just doing these things, it seems, just to do it, to get the questions from the audience. But here's the thing: I don't give a fuck, because I'm too busy being bored to care about any of this. That's the other thing about Maestro. It is so fucking boring.
So,
my God, is it boring?
He actually had a title card with that quote at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even the quote was kind of weird and muddled. It seemed to contradict itself in the second part of the quote. It was strange. I had the same experience like it was you. For me, it was like the opening 20 minutes or half an hour of Oppenheimer, where we've got to get through his youth, and it's very quick from this little sequence, which is a minute long, which covers this and then this thing and then this thing and then this thing, without it. So it's boring, but at the same time, it feels kind of rushed and stagey at the same time. So yeah, what a total disaster. I don't know why more people aren't piling on this. It's like a genuine, something very, what's the word we're looking for? Vainglorious, overweening.
Very vainglorious.
I don't think anybody saw it.
Nobody saw it. I mean, it's too bloody boring. That's the other thing. The worst thing you can do with any form of entertainment, whether it's music or plays or playing live music or a movie, is to bore the audience. That is the worst crime you can commit as an artist. And Maestro bored the living shit out of me. I walked out of Maestro. I got about an hour and 35 minutes in, and I was just looking up at the cinema screen, seeing Carey Mulligan's giant face in, I think, her 7th or 8th iteration of aging prosthetic and different hair. And I just thought, you know what? Fuck this. I am out of here.
One last criticism, which is I hate it when people don't know how to smoke properly in movies. Like, if you're a smoker, you'll take maybe 3 or 4 puffs, and then you'll maybe do a little dab. But I hate films where people will take a puff, dab, 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 and then another puff, dab, dab, dab. It's a little bugbear of mine.
Yeah.
It's right up there with people who never say goodbye when they hang up on a phone. That's my other bugbear.
All right. Well, that's I mean, I would love to continue to stick the boot into Maestro, but I hope that it wins nothing. I hope Carey Mulligan wins nothing. I hate them all, and the movie's garbage. All right.
Done.
Um,
Out the door.
so next one, Past Lives. Past Lives. Did anybody see that?
You know what? Unfortunately, it was on my list today, but I had too much other crap going on, and it looks really, really good. I am very, very interested. As a matter of fact, I don't know. I've got editing and stuff to do, but it's the very next one I'm going to watch because it looks great. And one thing that I think is really nice about this movie, and that separates it from the other movies, is that it's only an hour and 45 minutes. And you were talking about movies being boring, and I think that something about Oscars movies, they feel as though they have to be long to justify themselves. I mean, obviously, Oppenheimer's 3 hours long, Flower Moon 3 hours long. One of my complaints about The Holdovers, as much as I did like that movie, I would watch that movie again. I really, really did enjoy it. But in the middle, they just kind of felt like they needed to keep doing things that they didn't need to do. And you need to get the story to move along. And not every movie needs to be 2 hours and 15 minutes, 2.5 hours, whatever. So something that already Past Lives already has going for it is that it obviously didn't feel the need to drag itself out. And I greatly appreciate that.
Yeah. Echo, have you seen that movie?
Well, this is for me what I call the shameful peter out category. Like, I should be enjoying this, I should be appreciating its mastery, but I petered out and I lost interest and I stopped watching it. Especially since Christopher Nolan said it's one of his best films that he's appreciated of the last 10 years.
Damn.
It's perfect. It's entirely naturalistic, which can be profound in just the messiness of people's lives and the messiness of how people actually talk and relate to each other, and the messy unresolved tensions, the messiness of people's motivations, both within someone else in the relationship and also internally with themselves. All of that is great, but it doesn't naturally or intrinsically mean that the way that the film itself is quality, or that what you're watching is profound. Just because you're capturing those tensions, which are interesting in and of themselves, that's not, to me, a kind of cinematic artistry. So I thought it was okay, but I just didn't see the point. Maybe I'm not sensitive enough.
Yeah. I mean, I actually had the exact same experience as you, Echo. I checked out after about an hour and 10 minutes.
Did you feel slightly ashamed?
No, and I'll explain why. I don't think it's a bad movie. I don't think it's a bad movie, and I didn't hate it, for example, in the way I hated Maestro. I actually kind of liked Past Lives, but I felt that the main problem I had is that I didn't care about the characters at all. And this is the kind of movie that really needs you to care deeply about the characters in order to really launch emotionally. To establish that very important emotional connection, you need to really care about the characters. And I just didn't. I didn't care. So basically, I'll give a brief plot summary for anyone who is listening. Who, I'd say that's most people who haven't seen it, don't know what it's about. Past Lives is about it's mostly in Korean. It's in a mixture of Korean and English. It's a Korean movie, and it's about a Korean man and woman, and they were childhood friends, and they reconnect around university time. When they both go to university, they reconnect online, but one of them is living in Canada and the other is living in South Korea, and they develop a really close bond online. But the problem is neither can go see the other because they've both got stuff going on in their lives, and they just they can't really form a relationship. And it gets to the point where it's too tough for them, and they decide to break off their online relationship. And then later on, they meet up again, and they sort of start becoming closer and closer. But by this stage, they're both married, and it's like a love lost movie. A great love that could have been. Think Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It takes a lot of influences from that, and it does that quite openly. There are references, direct mentions of the movie Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind in Past Lives. The problem is, Eternal Sunshine works really well because you've got amazing screen chemistry between the two leads. Jim Carrey is incredible in it. It's a virtuoso performance from Jim Carrey, and Kate Winslet's also very good. So that movie works really well. You can really emotionally connect with those characters. The problem I had is that with Past Lives, I felt the characters were a little too bland. I couldn't connect with them. And whereas I cared in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, I did care about the characters and what happened to them. I really just didn't give a shit about. I didn't care. Well, if they get together, I don't care. If they just start cheating on both of their husbands or wives, I don't care. If a meteor drops on them, I don't care. I just, not a bad movie. It's very pleasant to allow to sort of drift by, but I wasn't a fan.
This would be the kind of film that maybe someone you know and respect mentioned it in passing, and you had an idle couple of hours when maybe you're sick or something, or you've got a day off work, and you decide to put in, and you're really pleasantly surprised by this charming little gem. Like, that's what this is.
Yeah.
This film is to me. But to be talked about this masterpiece in Oscar category, no, it's too close to real life. It doesn't have any storytelling craft really to it. So it just went over my head, I guess.
I mean, there are two things that I really liked about it. One, I could actually understand most of the Korean in it because the Korean's quite simple.
Right.
The Korean they use, and it's not advanced or anything because the girl went to live in Canada. So I guess and when she's talking to the guy and they're just talking to Korean on the computer, they're keeping it very basic, like kind of like get to know you questions. So I was able to understand most of that. So if there's anyone learning Korean for whatever reason, that's a good movie to watch because especially even if you're sort of at a mediocre level, you'll get a lot of it. And another thing I liked, and I laughed my ass off at this. There's a scene where one of the guys takes off and he says to his friends, "Okay, I'm away, guys." And then friend 1 turns around to friend 2 and says, "What are you going to do over the weekend?" And friend 2 says, "I'm going to play video games." I laughed my ass off when he said that because it's such a Korean thing to just spend the entire weekend playing video games. A lot of the time, my students won't show up on Monday because they were just in it's called a PC bang over here. They were gaming all weekend. So I found that very funny.
Price
it does have one
tickets to Korea.
But it's also disappointing in the context of recent Korean films that are kind of gripping and compelling, like Return to Seoul, and there was that one last year, which was I forget what it's called, but something to do with like an actor who's doing a Chekhov play, something like that, and their wife dies or something. So in the context of that, I just thought this was a little washed out and a little neither here nor there.
Yeah, I mean, I would have put Return to Seoul in here before I put Past Lives. Return to Seoul is a powerful movie. Really good movie. That was anyway. Although I don't know if that was eligible because each country is only allowed to nominate one movie for the Best Picture category. So it's possible that Return to Seoul, and that's a French movie, and I think the French movie was actually Anatomy of a Fall. So that's why Return to Seoul is not in here, I guess.
Right.
All right, so we're going to move on to American Fiction. And this movie's generating a lot of buzz right now. This movie it's beginning to gather some steam. A lot of movies, they come and they go and no one cares. But American Fiction is beginning to generate a bit of a reputation for itself just by word of mouth. Greg, have you seen it?
Yes and no. This one was a bad call. I thought I could watch it and work on some videos at the same time because I overestimated my abilities to pay attention to two things. So yes, I was in the room while it was on, but I'm gonna watch it again because I don't think I got all of it.
Yeah. What about you, Echo?
Yeah, this is more than Barbie. This is the one exhibit A and why there should not be 10 films in a best film category. It's not half as clever as it wants it to be or thinks that it is. It's an okay premise. It's a fairly good idea. The joke is done fairly well. It's something, I guess, that stirs up interesting ideas that are very current. It's just not a very interesting quality film. It's just okay in essentially every respect. It's got a central premise, which is sort of semi-grounded in reality, but it's also just a plain satire, which is not especially grounded in reality. So tonally, it's kind of wrong. So it gets those moments of an almost kind of like ideological slapstick combined with super grounded reality about dementia and a parent who's ailing. So tonally, it doesn't quite work. The supporting cast are kind of reductions to caricature, which again clashes with the idea of the strong, central, very familial human stuff as well. And I just didn't think it was especially clever. Sure, it explores some funny little hypocrisies and contradictions, but not in an especially clever way and not in an enduring way. So if this won an Oscar for essentially anything, I'd be pretty incredulous. I don't know. That's where I felt with it.
Yeah, I mean, I did like. Go ahead, Greg.
Good.
Well, I did like the movie. I just said I wouldn't watch it again, but for reasons I'll explain in a bit. So, what were you saying, Greg?
I mean, there were parts of it that I thought were funny. Obviously, you know, the whole inciting event about him making up the book, and it's just ridiculous, and it's all very funny. The thing that kind of irritated me, I liked that it looked at this idea that we all kind of have to play this character, right? Something that I've been watching a lot of videos about, you know, blackness and black in media, and you know how black people view themselves, how other people view black people. So I've been watching a lot of videos about this kind of stuff for my own personal reasons. And something that is irritating me about this, and it looks like American Society of Magical Negroes, is that it could explore this problem just from a black perspective, right? It would be, I think it would be much more elevated. It said, here's a problem, and I'm going to show you this problem from a black perspective. But this movie veers into, this is a unique black problem. And it's not a unique problem that black people face, that they're not, you know, that they're not taken for who they are. They're taken at face value. I think that's a problem that we all face. And I think a Society of Magical Negroes is going to do the same thing. They're going to try to do this thing where they're going to paint corporate society as very white, and black people have to mold themselves to fit in a corporate office. And that's bullshit. We all do. I mean, I work in an office building. I have to act a certain way to be there, and it's not who I really am. And that's life. So I thought there were some funny parts, and I thought there was some insightful commentary about how we as consumers view people at kind of a surface level, and we don't really view them as whole people. We kind of view them as products. I think there's some good and some bad about that. I just didn't like that. I didn't like that the writer tried to portray this as a very uniquely black issue, because it isn't. And it would have just been much better to tell it just through a black lens instead of as a unique black problem.
Yeah, just as we're talking about it, I realized that the movie is trying to do a lot more than it's really delivering. When I was watching it, I was thinking of it as a very basic satire on a problem that is very easy to make fun of, which is essentially middle-class, white, liberal, white guilt, and their fetishization of blacks and black culture, essentially.
Yeah.
That's done a lot in the United States. It's been imported into the UK. The BBC, in particular, fetishize black people. And when I say fetishize, I don't necessarily mean it's a sexual fetishization. It's more like a cultural fetishization. Like they treat them as something that is unusually important and exotic and particularly interesting, even though they're really not. And they're certainly no more interesting or exotic or anything than anybody else. I mean, why not do the same thing with the Welsh? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just doesn't make why do they have this weird draw toward black people? And you see it in advertising firms in the UK as well. Like despite the fact that they're only 3% of the population, they must be at least 40% of what you would see in advertising. And it's just this really odd cultural fetishization. So I like that it was satirizing that, how a certain type, and it really gets the type down well, the kind of office Karen type, how they will pedestalize black people and black people involved in culture. And they satirize that, and I thought that was very good. The problem with the movie, though, I suppose, is like Echo, you were saying, they're also trying to throw in a kind of subplot with the mom, where the mom has dementia, and it doesn't really go anywhere. And they also have a romantic subplot, which again goes absolutely nowhere, and they don't really seem to do anything with it. And it's almost like she's just an audience character, like she's just there for the main character to offload onto. And the gay brother as well kind of stinks as a character. It's a good performance, but it's so two-dimensional, and it's like when I was watching it, I didn't get the sense that these people are actually brothers. I almost felt like this is just this kind of weird gay guy who's kind of funny, who hangs around the place. That really didn't stick the landing at all, the subplot with the gay brother. They're trying to do too many things. There's just too much going on.
Yeah, all the different elements tonally are too discrete from each other in terms of where they fit in, interconnectedness, tone. So that's where the film fundamentally didn't work for me.
I'm actually kind of surprised that it got nominated and that it's getting critical reception, because in a way, I mean, it was obviously about, you know, the literary side of things, but in a way it is refreshingly kind of satirizing Hollywood and their, like, I think fetishization of black people. It's an excellent way to put it, because it really is only certain black stories, only struggle black stories are the ones that we want to tell, because those are the ones that make us feel the most empathetic, and you know, that's the kind of thing that we want to talk about. Whereas in America here, there's a lot of race topics, and anybody, even for leftists, black people that don't fit into a certain mold are either, you know, they're Uncle Toms, or they are raccoons, or they're the shortened version of that, which I don't want to get you in trouble for saying. It could have been really great. Like there's bones here that they could have done such amazing commentary with, and they just didn't stick the landing, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, the stories are there. I mean, I see them all the time on YouTube. For example, black students that go to a university, and they're pressured very heavily by the Black Student Union, or the Black Student Body, to be more black and to go to all these protests. For some reason, there's a certain element of the Western cultural sphere that seems to identify blackness with political Marxism. So, for example, if you look at Spotify, and during Black History Month, they'll often play black playlists. Usually their cover for black playlist, it's not great black musicians. Like, it's not Duke Ellington or Charles Mingus or Jimi Hendrix. No, it is a BLM fest. Like, it's like, what? Why are you associating black identity with Marxism? What the heck? Why do you automatically assume that it's a fundamentally political identity? It makes no bloody sense. Like, musically, there are spheres of human emotion and experience that are unique to African Americans, you know, black people that have lived in America for a long time, and that comes through their musical tradition. But it's weird. The focus seems to be political. And for example, in a university environment, a student could go to a university environment and he's pressured into doing all this stuff, and he just doesn't want to. He's a middle class black. He's not like a diversity hire. He's not from the ghetto or anything like that, but he's being encouraged to act and dress like all this nonsense. That would be very interesting. And that is a lot of pressure, I imagine, that a lot of people have when they go to university. And stories like that can get left behind.
I felt this film was in some ways a kind of like 2-hour-long Key and Peele sketch. I did like, there's an interesting idea, an interesting tension about white people who are so lacking in some sort of core intrinsic identity of their own, that they find an identity in empowering the marginalized and seeing their voices grow, that becomes an element to nourish their own identity by proxy. So I think there's a little interesting tension there.
Allies.
Well, yeah, allies. Yeah.
Good old allies.
Do you have to move? Yes. Well, speaking of allies, it's great that you should say that, Greg, because it segues very nicely into this next segment. In the interests of keeping my white privilege in check, I wish to draw attention of the viewers to the fact that this stream is lacking in diversity. And while I, as a straight white man, am thrilled to see a reflection of myself, reflected back at myself in the persons of Greg and Echo, I'm also aware that we need to make space for the spiritual influence of a body of color. For that reason, I have decided to channel the spirit of a champion of diversity of the modern age, Claudine Gay, the first black female president of Harvard. Following her example, I have plagiarized the competitive ranking segment from Echo Chamberlain's stream and present it to you now. In this segment, we're going to decide the worst ever Oscar win. All right. Hold on, I need to play the video.
Okay. I feel you.
Is this it? No, that's not it. Oh, no, here it is. Here it is. I got it.
There can be only one.
All right. So
Classy.
We're going to be doing the worst. Fucking love that movie, man. Love it.
Good.
Oh, good.
Do you think that the reboot's going to be as good?
Yes.
They're doing the Highlander reboot.
Yeah, I've got Chris Stofowski, whatever, the guys behind the John Wick films, and he loves Highlander, and he's been trying to get his hands on it for about 10 years. So I believe that he can do it.
Good.
Hey, at least a fan is actually doing it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
God, that's points already.
Yeah.
All right, so I need to explain to you how we're going to do this.
Stahelski. Go ahead.
Yep. So the accused will be judged according to a numerical ranking system on a scale of 0 to 5. So let me explain this here. 0, the Oscar win was entirely justified, full exoneration. 1, not as bad as it's made out to be, it was another time. 2, a very bad decision, but not outright criminal. 3, arrests need to be made, public inquisitions ordered, and suspects brutally interrogated. 4, people's courts must be set up in which those responsible will be forced to confess their crimes in humiliating struggle sessions. If they are felt to be genuinely contrite, they will be spared execution and sentenced to long terms of hard labor and re-education. And 5, the Oscar itself must be exorcised from the demons that inhabit it, then cast back into the fires of Mount Doom from whence it was forged. All involved must have all traces of their existence wiped from the dimension of existence we call reality. Praise of the Oscar win must be outlawed upon pain of banishment to the farthest flung margins of civilization. All right.
Harsh, but fair. Once you get past 1, things get pretty dark on the scale.
All right. So
All right, well, let's see how we go.
That's our scale. So basically, think of 0 as total exoneration and 5 is just it couldn't possibly be any worse. So here we go. Worst Oscar segment. So number 1, we're not gonna do that shit where we start in the 1930s and we're talking about movies that nobody has ever heard of, or that only cinephiles have even seen. So we're gonna start in 1985. I Just Called to Say I Love You. Stevie Wonder won Best Original Song from The Woman in Red. So guys, what are your thoughts? Echo, we'll start with you. How would you judge this Oscar win?
I'm already singing it.
Well, to go from the guy with the raw R&B soul of Signed, Sealed, Delivered, and a music like that with like organic sounds and a kind of raw grittiness to it, and a life-affirming, beautiful vocal, to go to a pure 80s kitsch synth-driven track with the most AM radio elevator hook and the most benign expression of fidelity to one's loved one. It is an earworm, but an earworm in the sense of Wrath of Khan has an earworm. So I think, where do I place it? It has to be, but it's still Stevie, so I'm putting it in as a 2, right? I don't think
2. All right. Oh, by the way, Greg, can you keep score?
Yes.
All right. So while Greg's assembling his stationery, I will just I'll give my opinion on it. So I'm gonna. It is Stevie Wonder, and he's done some tremendously excellent stuff in the 70s. That's really the only redeeming aspect here. But it's not the worst song, especially when you compare it with the stuff that you get today. Like I even did a worst song segment in the Worst of Woke Awards there, and Jesus Christ, the garbage they're coming out with today. So when you compare it with stuff like with what we get today, it suddenly doesn't seem so bad. So I'm with Echo. I don't think this is criminal. I would probably give it a 2. So Greg.
Plus, in the overall soundscape of the 80s, it's not too much of a synth.
Yeah, it's very 80s. It's very much a little time capsule as well, if you want to look at the positives of it.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not, I don't know. I don't think it's the worst. It's not Flock of Seagulls. It's not some of the experimentation that we got in the 80s. I'm gonna back you guys up. It's unanimous too, because it is Steve. And you know what? Of all the earworms, it's one that I don't mind having in my head. I mean, it's relaxing. It's nice. It's better than me spelling out bananas from Gwen Stefani, and I don't want to do that. So I would rather have this one. So we'll give it a 2 unanimous.
So I mean, it does have the rhyme scheme of care should rhyme with heart at the end. So he even botched that.
Yeah, so it looks like it gets away with it, this one. But number 2, Out of Africa, Best Picture, 1986. So, Echo, any thoughts?
I'm still trying to find out what accent middle. Yeah, it's sort of South African, but also kind of by way of the Netherlands, crossed with some kind of other Zimbabwe, but then it's got a little bit of New Zealand in it too, which is quite confusing for me. And it's got Robert Redford being generic Robert Redford. it's a whole bunch of nothing. I don't think it's offensively bad. It's got people who should know better doing better. So again, I can't see any reason why I would push this over a 2. And it's a very 1980s, a lush kind of nostalgia for that colonial period and how people live their lives with the noble savage in the background and the giant engulfing but romantic landscape of Africa. So it's not the worst thing in the world. So it sits humbly at a 2.
All right. Greg, have you seen Out of Africa?
I have not, so we're gonna average your 2 scores, and I'm gonna Harvard the average of your 2 scores.
All right. Well, I mean, I tried to watch it once. I was so fucking bored that I just couldn't do it. So I'm just gonna give it a 3, just because if I was so bored that I couldn't finish and it won best picture, I imagine that's a fairly common experience. I would guess that Out of Africa is a movie that nobody watches anymore. It's just an unwatched best picture winner. So I'll give it a 3.
You know, best picture is an odd. It's there's no defining. My kids were asking me, like, what makes best picture? I'm like, well, there's really no defining thing, and I think some of them are terribly boring because I think sometimes the Academy is like, but it's artsy, and it's film, right? Acting, thespian. I think that's kind of where I don't know. It's how they tend to judge them sometimes.
That's when they use the ultimate euphemism of saying that it's epic, an epic historical romance.
All right, so we'll give Out of Africa a 7 then. All right, so moving on to number 3, Driving Miss Daisy. All right, Greg, start us off.
This is gonna get a 4 or a 5 because Dead Poets Society was a powerful, during my formative years. That was a powerful movie. I watched it multiple times. It really, it really, I'm not bullshitting it. It really affected me when I was a kid. I loved it. Loved Robin Williams in it. I felt the theme of, trying to be different, do your own thing. So the fact that it was beaten by anyone, it's really not Driving Miss Daisy's fault. It's the fact that anyone was given this award over Dead Poet Society. I'm going to go with a 4.
Echo?
It's an inoffensive movie. It's not a great movie. I think even Morgan Freeman said that he didn't really think that it was that great a film and that something else he was doing at the same time was way more important and worthwhile. I think it captured a 1980s thing where you had that, like, the baby boomer generation that had been through the war, and they were at a time where they wanted films which kind of reflected them in their old age, like Cocoon, films like that. Like a sense of renewal or still being important for that generation, plus also wistful and nostalgic and with a certain charm to it. So it fits in there, but it's just not a good film. It's average. It's a little bit twee. So I would have to give it, again, I'm kind of lowballing these things, but I don't think I could go worse than a 2 on this.
Well, I'm probably closer to what Greg thinks. I'm going to be very
I need to get let's establish our criteria a little bit. So by itself, plus also in the context of did it shellac and like knock the kneecaps under from more deserving films? So I have to put that into my criteria as well, or am I just judging it purely on its own merit or lack of?
No, I mean, obviously you have to judge it. You got to do both. I mean, you have to judge it against what didn't win that same year, but also judge it on its own merit. So,
well, what did it kneecap? What did the film kneecap?
In 1990,
Dead Poet Society.
All right. Well, in that case, in that case, I'm moving up to a 3.
Okay. I'm definitely gonna give Driving Miss Daisy a 4. It's definitely not among the worst offenders here. Like I wouldn't go 5 because I don't think it's a terrible film, but it is. I don't even think it's average. I think this is a bad movie. I saw it last year for the first time, or maybe the year before, but I thought it was very boring. It was quite badly dated. I'm not necessarily in the presentation of the more servile black character. That I didn't have a problem with that because that was a reality at one point in American life, and there's nothing wrong with depicting reality. It was just that it bored the shit out of me. I didn't care about the characters. It's about an old lady trying to be convinced to get out of the house by her chauffeur. It's like, who gives a fuck? But I understand, where I was coming from and saying that it's a boomer movie. It's a boomer movie. It's a nostalgia movie. It's the equivalent of a movie today that is about the 1990s or something.
Or not a boomer. What's the generation preceding the boomers?
Oh, the silent generation.
Yeah, it's a silent generation.
It's just a throwback movie, and that's fair enough. But it's fine. put it on TV at 3 p.m. in the middle of the day. Don't try to get the rest of us to watch this shite. This is the kind of movie that just should never be watched again. It should have come out and have been completely forgotten about. In fact, it's only remembered today as an infamously bad Best Oscar winner because it is a pretty bad movie when it comes down to it. When all's said and done, it's very boring. It's
a trailer movie. You look at the trailer and go, "Oh, that's a charming premise. That's a nice idea." There's absolutely no reason to stretch it out to an hour and a half or 2 hours.
Yeah, so I'd give that one a 4. Okay,
it also beat Field of Dreams. I mean, I'm raising hell about Dead Poets, but also Field of Dreams, and I feel like even that is a much better movie than Driving Miss Daisy.
All right,
that's a very American film, Greg. That's an American DNA that the rest of the world doesn't care about in the slightest.
Yeah, that's a good point. I suppose Academy is a worldwide thing. That was well, Born on the 4th of July was also that year, and My Left Foot, the story of Christy Brown.
So that didn't win the Oscar. Oh my God. Gee, should I go up to a 4? I'm teetering at a 4 now. No, I'm sticking on my 3. Daniel Day-Lewis got his Oscar, so that's fine.
Al Pacino, Best Actor, Scent of a Woman, 1993.
I'm gonna go with a 2 on this one because it wasn't. I know a lot of people, just feel like it was a gimme. Like, well, hey, you need it. A lifetime achievement or some kind of crap. Like people have mocked it for that. But then, if you look at the other stuff, you got. I'm pulling it up here. Robert Downey Jr. for Chamberlain, Clint Eastwood for Unforgiven, Stephen Rea for The Crying Game, and Denzel Washington for Malcolm X. I think, Denzel could have gotten it for Malcolm X. But it's not like any of those other performances were so defining that like it was a snub. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna go. It's a 2 or a 1. I don't know. Do I do points? 1.75, 2. There it is.
2. Okay. I mean, having heard now that it beat Clint Eastwood's performance in Unforgiven, which is one of my favorite performances of his career. It's a great performance from one of the great movies of the 90s. I'm going to have to give this thing I also hate Scent of a Woman. I just think it's such a sentimentalist pile of shite. I really hate that movie. And Al Pacino was dreadful in it, just screaming a lot. I'm going to have to give it a 4. Especially since it beat Unforgiven, like Clint Eastwood gives a very deep, reserved performance. It's excellent. And it's perfect in that movie. He just captures that character so well, and that I still remember that character, even haven't seen that movie as a kid. Yeah, that's a great performance. I'm giving this thing a 4. I hate the movie. I hate Al Pacino in it. I hate the screaming. I hate the kid. I hate the kid actor. I can't stand it. So I'm gonna give it a 4. Not the worst. Like I wouldn't give it a 5, but yeah, I see so few redeeming aspects in this.
This is the one where he's giving a 4. Yeah, this is the one with the gigantic climactic court scene where he's ridiculously overacting, and it's hammy and almost painful to watch.
It's hard to watch now.
Yeah, it's a terrible performance by him, given from which he got the accolade. But I agree with Greg that the field was pretty weak overall, so I don't see any particular snubs there. So again, this sits at a 3 for me because it's pretty notorious in the history of Oscar bullshit. So it has to get that 3. But it's Al Pacino, so I'm not fazed if he gets an Oscar. I'm glad to see he got one. It's a shit film, but in a shit year with a shit field, so it sits at a 3 for me.
All right. So I'm going to go straight ahead with the next one, which is Angelina Jolie, 1998 Best Supporting Actress, got interrupted. So I was looking through a lot of lists when I was researching this, and her name kept coming up again and again and again. And she seems to be a favorite punching bag of the worst actors lists online. And I'm going to come straight out and say it. I would give this a 0. I think this should be exonerated, and I'll explain why. She's quite good in it. She's hot as fuck in the movie. It's great to look at. And here's her competition: Toni Collette from The Sixth Sense, Catherine Keener from Being John Malkovich, who was good but nothing special, Samantha Morton from Sweet and Lowdown. Yeah, raise your hand if you know what that is. Chloe Sevigny from Boys Don't Cry. Boys Don't Cry is a now forgotten awards bait movie. So there's just no competition there. I'd give that to Angelina Jolie. I think that's quite a good decision. What are your thoughts, boys?
This is another one I didn't see this one. I was young at the time, so I'm gonna average on this one as well.
This is a travesty for me. Justice for Tony. Justice for Tony Collette. Come on, she was incredible in The Sixth Sense. She has to sell that scene where she's in the car with the boy, and she has to sell that scene of revelation, and she does it exquisitely. She does a beautiful rendition or expression of a solo mom with all these extreme tensions. Catherine Keener was great in being John Malkovich. She got that. She nailed her role, identified and delivered a role in a very complex, weird to express film. Chloe Sevigny was great in Boys Don't Cry. So this, for me, this is a glaring. I'm going I'm going 4 on this. That's where I'm at. I'm going 4.
Desmond, you gave it a 0. Is that correct?
Well, I exonerated. Yeah, because I think. All right. To be fair, Echo seems to know a lot more about this than me. He really knows his stuff in this one. So I'd say listen to Echo, but I just don't think it's a bad performance. I think Angelina Jolie. People accuse her of being hammy, but that's the character she's playing. She's playing a crazy neurotic girl who is very emotionally all over the place, and she does a very good job of it. So as much as the other performances are good, I don't think it's like that Al Pacino one is awful. Like, it's a fucking terrible performance. If an actor did that today, they'd get a Razzie.
That's true.
Whereas I think Angelina Jolie did actually give a good performance, so I don't think it's legitimate to just because these other actors were good. Maybe even better. I don't think it's fair to use her as a punching bag because I think she was actually quite good in the movie.
Yeah, right. I'm scaling down to a 3, Greg. If you can make the alteration there.
All right.
Because Tony Collette, The Sixth Sense, and Hereditary, 2 of the worst snubs in history. So justice for Tony.
All right, so we got this one. Jesus Christ. Okay, number 6. Ron Howard wins Best Director in 2001 for A Beautiful Mind. He beats Fellowship of the Ring and Mulholland Drive by David Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna just. My head's going to explode if someone doesn't take this over.
I'll take a 5 on that one. I'm going 5. And this one, I'm not even trying to be hyperbolic because I really think I thought A Beautiful Mind was good. Like, I'm not going to say it is absolute, like, total upset. Oh my God. Like, it was good. But like you said earlier, the Academy loves biopics, and I'm going to stick to that pronunciation. I'm owning it. And I'm just
me too. Yes.
They love them. I thought it was good. I thought Russell Crowe was very good. Paul Bettany was very good. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a great movie. But when you're talking about Best Picture, and I know that's the next one, but still they're very related. I think that what Peter Jackson did with the adaptation of The Lord of the Rings, it really was game changing. As far as book adaptations go, it was excellent, and especially as far as fantasy book adaptations go, because there have been plenty of great book adaptations, but there have been very few fantasy book adaptations or sci-fi book adaptations. Those are notoriously difficult to nail, and he crushed it. I mean, absolutely destroyed it, such that Rings of Power, while it's shit, but it is 20 years later, it is made to look like more shit than it really is because it has to be compared to this giant of a film. So it's a 5 for sure.
Echo?
I don't think that The Lord of the Rings was quite cooked yet. It had a trilogy to go. It had had a fantastic debut. People were still trying to decipher and determine in their mind, okay, where does this fit? Is it a genre piece? Is it Oscar worthy? It feels like it doesn't quite sit in the Oscar top category. David Lynch is he's an auteur, but he's also got a kooky elements to him. He can be a bit all over the place. He did well. He directed a great film, but the film itself was great. And I'm not sure if you can attribute all of that to him because there's a lot of elements in that film. It should have won. Both of those are probably slightly better than Ron Howard. But this is the one time where Ron Howard, known as Mr. Fix-It, actually had a chance to properly express himself and not be Mr. Fix-It and be someone who could produce a good film, which is competent and decent. So I give it it's a 2 for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Greg on this. I'm gonna give this. I'm gonna have to give this a 5. I'm very close to 4, but I'm gonna go for 5 because of Mulholland Drive by David Lynch. Mulholland Drive is an incredible movie, and David Lynch's direction in it is amazing. It's such a deep movie. It's got layers and layers and layers of meaning. You have the immediate movie, which is confusing and you're not quite sure what's going on. And then you have the story that's hidden within that, which isn't that hard to decipher. But then beyond that, there's layers of meaning, and it has some scenes which are just absolutely mind-blowingly brilliant. There's a scene where a guy is in a restaurant and he's describing a dream that he had. It's one of the greatest movie scenes. It's incredible, and it's not necessarily complex or anything. It's just the elements that David Lynch brings out from the actors and the cinematography, the soundscape, everything. It's so perfect. It's a perfect scene. And then, of course, you've got Peter Jackson, who did an incredible adaptation. Like, he just knocked it out of the fucking park with an incredibly difficult adaptation of a very dense book. To have those two guys and then hand it off to someone who makes a shit movie in that extremely now very, very tired cliche of the tortured genius. And if you go back and watch A Beautiful Mind's a bad movie. It has aged so badly. It's very poor. It's very poorly paced. The acting is kind of all over the place and quite histrionic. It's got that cliche where his best friend is actually his imaginary friend. And then they play that as a reveal, which I don't think really comes off well. It's a badly dated movie. So I'm going to give this one a 5. I just think this was a horrendous decision.
All right, Greg, move me up to a 3. I'm very malleable about this. It's like 3 Angry Men.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
Feel the
tribunal,
hate course through you.
All right, so number 7 is A Beautiful Mind wins Best Picture, and same reasons. I'm going to give this a 5. This is absurd. It's a bad movie, and Mulholland Drive and Fellowship are both masterpieces. Echo?
Yep. Okay, fine. 5.
Yes.
just to prove that I can be vicious and gritty, and I can bring it if I need to.
You're one of the cool kids now.
All right. By the way, if we need a tiebreaker, we're going to go to chat. So chat, I suspect this is not the only 15 we're going to have, so you'll be the tiebreaker. All right, number 8 is Chicago wins Best Picture in 2002, and it beats Gangs of New York, The Pianist, and Lord of the Rings: Two Towers.
You know what? I want to continue being like super pissed that, Lord of the Rings still wasn't getting recognition. But I also did think Chicago was a good movie, and it was a good musical. I did enjoy it. However, when I'm looking at, I thought Lord of the Rings was great. I didn't see The Pianist. Gangs of New York was fantastic. So as much as I did enjoy Chicago, I'm looking at this competition and I'm like, how did that win? I mean, it was a great movie and all, but come on, you had Lord of the Rings and Gangs of New York to go up against. I gotta go with a 3 because I spent all my anger on the last 2 categories. I'm sated. I'm good to go now.
Gangs of New York is in my estimation and in the estimation of some other people kind of a bit of a Scorsese slight misfire. It's not quite coherent or cohesive. Tonally, it doesn't quite work. The cinematography is strangely off. It doesn't quite work on the eye. The Pianist, I refuse to watch anything by that director because I think he hasn't accounted or atoned for himself, and I get spooked out by people who work with him. So that's dodgy, and that's kind of excludes him for some reason. It's competent, it's good, but it's not exceptional. And The Two Towers, again, for the same reason, like you got the set piece at Helm's Deep is like one of the most incredible things in cinema ever. But I also understand that Chicago, it's not for me, not made for me, but it's a powerful, strong, expressive movie that people dancing in the aisles. So I don't see any particular problems with this, and I'd give it a. I'm giving it a 0.
0? Wow.
I was
originally going to give it a 3, but I'm going to try.
Give me a 1.
A 1.
Okay. Right. I was originally going to give it a 3.
That's your
I'm
final
going to
answer.
talk back down to a 2 because I'll give this one a 2 because I think The Pianist actually isn't a very good movie. It's it's a Holocaust movie, and you've got to have your Holocaust nominations. In fact, we've got a Holocaust movie coming up later. But it's not aged very well. The production design isn't very convincing. The action is kind of hammy and not particularly well done. It's low. The problem is it suffers from its low budget. It's just not high budget enough to be very convincing. It still looks kind of good, and Adrian Brody's very good in it, but it's not as great a movie. Like at the time, people were like, "Oh, this is the Schindler's List of the modern age," and it really isn't. It's quite badly paced because it jumps through different, across a period of years, and sometimes those jumps are very jarring. Gangs of New York, I think, is a great movie. And of course the Two Towers, but I also like Chicago. I think Chicago, it is a good movie. The performances are very good. It comes off very well, and creating a good screen adaptation of anything is always difficult, and especially with musicals. So I mean, I'll stick with my two. I still think this should have been Gangs of New York. You could have even gone Two Towers. Definitely not The Pianist, but it's not too bad. It's certainly nothing criminal here, so I'd give it a 2. So we're moving on to number 9, which is Renee Zellweger wins Best Supporting Actress for Cold Mountain. Yeah, thoughts, guys?
I'm looking up who she was competing with here because I did see that, and I thought she was very good. I didn't think that she overacted. I thought she added to a lot of the scenes that she was in. It's been a lot of years since I've seen it, but I wasn't struck as this being absolutely horrific. Hang on. Do you have who the competition was? I'm trying to pull it up right now.
I didn't get this competition for that year. Let's have a look. No, I don't have it here.
What do you got thoughts, Echo?
I have to recuse myself from this, so just divide whatever your guys' scores are.
I mean, I've seen it a couple of times. Cold Mountain's a pretty good movie. It's kind of the run-of-the-mill solid American Civil War movie, and Renee Zellweger she's supposed to be comic relief. I think that's what a lot of people don't get. It's a very, very serious movie, and it can be quite a depressing movie, and her character is supposed to bring a bit of comic relief into it, and she does it quite successfully. And given that it's not that great a movie or anything, she shows up on set, she's supposed to be this funny little kooky character and to be a bit silly, and she does a fairly decent job of it. So it depends on the competition. What was the competition?
Oh, I'm having some slow problems here. Shora Agdashlu for House of Sand and Fog, Patricia Clarkson for Pieces of April, Marcia Gay Harden for Mystic River, and Holly Hunter for 13.
These are all movies that have been completely forgotten about.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm just going to give this one a 0. I really don't see a problem here. I think this is just one of those things that people like to pick on. What do you think, guys?
Yeah. I'll defer to you because I don't have enough context.
I'm going 0 as well. So
yeah, she's been exonerated. So there you go. Someone tell Renee Zellweger she has been officially exonerated.
Well, that's a weight off her shoulders.
Exoneration right there.
All right, number 10. Sean Penn in Mystic River 2003 beats Bill Murray for Lost in Translation.
So I didn't see Mystic River because I have a personal thing with Sean Penn. I just think he's a real piece of shit, and I've never really understood why everybody thinks he's just this incredible actor. He's just got that reputation, and then of course his antics in interviews and his politics and everything. I just don't like him. So I don't ever really watch stuff that he's in. I didn't see Milk. I didn't see Mystic River and all that stuff. I did see Lost in Translation, however, and I thought it was outstanding. And I really liked the fact it was, a lot of comedy actors do the serious stuff. And oftentimes they're like, I want to be taken seriously. I'm a serious person, But I think Bill Murray really nailed this and showed that he's got a lot of range. I mean, he's a silly guy. Everybody, fell in love with him in Ghostbusters and everything and Caddyshack. And I thought he did a great job bringing a serious tone to that movie. I thought it was really great, and his performance was really great. So I'm not having seen Sean Penn and not liking him. I guess I got to give this one. I give it a 2 because I don't know enough to be pissed about it, but I just don't like Sean Penn, so 2 it is.
Yeah, I mean, I seriously dislike Sean Penn. I remember once he wrote an article for The Guardian in which he was talking about the Falklands, and he was constantly referring to it as the Falklands / Las Malvinas. Like he was using both names, and I hate him. And that's just one out. He's such a wanker. Why does he try to insert himself into public life? Anyway. So his performance in Mystic River is good, but it's a bit one note. It's a bit run of the mill, and it's nothing that 100 other actors couldn't do. Whereas I think that Bill Murray, his performance in Lost in Translation was recognized as being very good at the time, but I don't think people appreciated just how fucking good it was. When you go back and watch that movie, Bill Murray gives an amazing performance. That'll be remembered as one of his great performances. Whereas at the time, I think it was people just sort of thought, oh well, Bill Murray's in a movie and he's good, so let's give him an Oscar nomination because it's his turn. No, he really earned that. He should have won. He was incredible. Whereas Sean Penn just gave a good performance, nothing special. It's a bit one note even. I would give this one a 4.
All right.
Well, you guys are going to be surprised by my direction because I go total exoneration. I thought, Lost in Translation is, I hate that film with the heat of two suns. It's a film about nothing. It's so proud and it's so impressed by its own atmosphere and its own poignancy. It's a load of shit. It's about nothing. It's a relationship that doesn't turn into anything. No, it's a load of garbage. Whereas Sean Penn, politics and personality aside, because everyone in Hollywood is cuckoo to some degree, he radiated a machismo and an energy in that film, which I thought was peak Sean Penn. Him and that whole milk phase is him where he is at a very highly elevated level. And I thought he was outstanding in that film. He creates the emotional rawness in the film, and he has a magnetism in that role. So a firm 0 from your echo.
All right. And we'll get into an angry debate about the greatness of Lost in Translation another time.
All right, okay. Fly.
Number 11 is Crash, Best Picture 2006. It beats Good Night and Good Luck. It also beats Brokeback Mountain, Capote, and Munich. Now, before we continue, I do want to actually just point out a little bit of trivia here. A journalist got together. He contacted hundreds of Academy members who voted that year because it's an infamously bad Best Picture winner. Mm-hmm. Everybody thought it should have gone to Brokeback Mountain. So they ran back the vote.
Yay. Finally, a featured guest.
Hold on, guys. Hold on.
Wow, it's got
what's wrong?
Strong opinions about Crash.
Right. I have strong opinions about them as well. 2006 was a bad year, and I know we're not going to talk about it, so I'm going to take this opportunity to gripe and bitch and moan about 2006's Babel. That I am glad did not get on that list. It was nominated for several things, and I think that film is absolute shit. And I'm actually surprised that it didn't get more nominations than it got, because it is the exact it's very much like Crash. It's the exact kind of movie that Hollywood highbrow people love. It's the one with Brad Pitt. And it's basically just 4 separate stories that are tenuously connected in a stupid plot devicey kind of way, and everybody's very sad and it's very dramatic and you're supposed to feel something but you fucking don't. And it was absolutely awful. The only thing that was good about, I looked up what awards it actually did win. It only won 1 award, and that was not really for itself. It was Best Score, which was given to Gustavo Santaolalla, who anyone who plays video games will know from Last of Us Parts 1 and 2, and his score in those games elevated them. I mean, they were already great emotional games, but it elevated, took it up to the next level. He's outstanding. So he deserves Best Score on that one, but Babel deserved to die in unknown infamy for fucking ever, and I hated it. So there we go.
I can't remember what Babel is about, but isn't it like the peak of the trying to make sense of the world in a profound way post 9/11 kind of deal? Like with Iraq and foreign wars and that kind of thing, and international entanglements, and what does democracy mean, and how do we find our place in it all?
I mean, I think that's what they wanted to go for, but what they ended up with was just everyone's sad for no reason. That's what I think. That's whoever, I don't even know who made it. They just thought that's what makes a good drama, is everything's dramatic and everyone's sad, and then we'll tie these stories all together in a really silly way. And the gun that was used to shoot Brad Pitt's wife, it was actually sold by the Japanese guy whose daughter is deaf and she's being bullied at school, and that's it was fucking stupid.
Really uptight about Crash.
Anyway, so the punchline of my joke was interrupted, but here it is, and it's not a joke, it's true. So basically, they ran back the vote for the 2006 Academy Award, and Brokeback Mountain came on top.
Oh, that's pretty good, I guess. Definitely
so
worth the wait, that joke.
Yeah,
yeah.
Although I suspect people enjoyed the interruption more than the punchline.
So, yeah.
So Crash is an absolutely fucking terrible movie.
I think we're all going to be pretty aligned on this. This is a pure perfect travesty. I mean, look down that list. I mean, Brokeback Mountain. It gets sent up quite a lot and satirized in more sort of right-leaning live streams, like it gets memed and that kind of thing. But it's genuinely a good and touching picture. With two actors at the height of their powers. Ang Lee is directing it. It's based off a lovely novella. It has entirely its own atmosphere. And what it dealt with, because up till then, queer stories, LGBT stories in cinema had often been compacted into a short time. It'd usually be like a coming of age story, or coming out of the shadows and finding someone and joining together. This was the first one where it had the broad swaths of time, the long epic of people's lives and how their relationships change and how those long steeped tendernesses change. And for that to be done in a queer story for the first time was quite affecting, and I think it had a profound effect on a lot of people. And I thought it came out at a time, so to speak, that gave a lot of very mainstream people a kind of permission structure to go, oh, these people do have their own lives, and they do have these long, extended, deeply shaped and charged and changed narratives in their lives that span decades and a whole lifetime. And so I think it had a huge, profound effect in that way as well. Good Night and Good Luck was a beautifully rendered, very subtle, very understated film, which came out exactly the right time. Edward R. Murrow was the central idea there. When you had like all the conflicting narratives and exhausting drama of the Iraq War and misinformation and all of that, so that came out at exactly the right time. Capote was fantastic. What's his name at his peak, and Munich was a Steven Spielberg, very profound and mature piece as well. So this is an utter disaster and travesty. So it has to be a 5.
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, you could. I would probably give it to Munich there. Philip Seymour Hoffman, excellent at Capote. Munich's a fantastic movie. Brokeback Mountain, I think, has kind of aged badly, but it's as far as those types of movies goes, it's certainly got there's a lot of things to like about it, a lot of redeeming elements, and the two central performances are incredible. I mean, Jake Gyllenhaal and Heath Ledger are just brilliant in that. But yeah, that's shocking. So is that 15? Did that get a 15? Okay, so yeah, the chat is going to have to do a tiebreaker. All right, so next we got King's Speech, 2010 Best Picture. It beats The Social Network, Inception, The Fighter, Black Swan, and True Grit.
That's astonishing.
It's bad, isn't it?
You know, I liked King's Speech. I thought I enjoyed it all the way through. However, given the competition, I thought True Grit was outstanding. I thought Inception was outstanding. I'm going to go with a lower score on this one because although I think it didn't deserve to win, I can't say that King's Speech was so shitty and undeserving of this that it it's this shocking, baffling award. The Academy, they do like their biopics. They do like it is the kind of movie that they're going to give awards to, right? And I thought Colin Firth did a really good job in it. Write his name there. I'm going to go with a 2 on this one. I'm giving this a light sentence.
All right. I mean, I could go into detail, but we do have to kind of crack on. So I will just say King's Speech, solid movie, pretty fun at times. I really like Jeffrey Rush in it. Not as good as these other movies, but I will go ahead and I think a lot of these other movies, it takes time to realize just how good they are. For example, The Social Network, it's a movie that has aged very, very well, but at the time, it was easy to mistake it as a kind of cash-in biopic. So I can understand where they were coming from. I don't think there's anything criminal here. I'll just give this a 2.
Quentin Tarantino described The Social Network as the best film of the millennium so far. And he's right. When you think about it and you rewatch that film, its construction, you think what its subject matter is about and how it turns it into an utterly pulsating film where you're fascinated by the the avarice, the desperation of all these people. So to take that premise and that subject matter and turn it into this glossy, shimmering, glinting, beautiful film, beautifully paced, beautifully shot, beautifully acted, beautifully interconnected with all its plot elements and its various stories and narratives and motivations, and it pulsates with its own energy. And so I think it's a travesty. So it's a big old fat 5.
Yeah.
Burning.
I agree that the Social Network's a great movie. I just think that it would have taken a few years, because it is so good, but its greatness is in its depth, and I think it takes a few years for that to come out and for people to become more aware of that. So I can understand where the Oscar was, why they made that mistake. It was an easy mistake to make, is the point I'm making. So 13, Bohemian Rhapsody, best editing. This is an appallingly edited movie. Lots of cuts. Apparently, they had to show an equal amount of screen time to all the different members of the band in all the scenes where they were together. But in addition to that, like that aside, it's just badly edited. There are scenes where you've got Freddie Mercury just sitting by himself, and it's got lots of cuts for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe the editor wanted to make it feel consistent in terms of the editing, but the editing's awful. This is such a bizarre Oscar. I think it's because they managed to remake the Live Aid performance. I think that's why it won best editing, but fucking terrible. I mean, garbage movie, garbage editing. What do you guys think? I mean, I'm going to give this one a 4. It's not the worst. I mean, it's editing, so the Academy members probably, I don't know. I'll give it a 4. There you go. What do you think?
I've got to recuse. I'm gonna average on this one.
There are videos on YouTube specifically devoted to how terrible the editing is in this film. Like you were saying, like not important scenes, just scenes where they're outdoors around a table discussing stuff, and the edits are all over the place and weird and bizarre and timing wise. So this has to be a 4 because editing isn't life or death situation. So I'll give it a 4.
All right. So next we got Green Book. This people hate this one. They love to hate this. You go onto any forum or any blog or any online publication that's doing their worst Oscars list, and Green Book always shows up really high. They hate Green Book. So it won Best Film in 2019. It was up against Black Panther, Black KKK Klansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, The Favorite, Green Book, Roma, A Star Is Born, and Vice. And it beat all them for Best Picture. So what are your thoughts, Greg?
I never did see this one, and I've seen all the discourse about it, and I do. Apparently, it is inaccurate. Like, so it is historically inaccurate that the driver and the guy who was driving, they weren't buddies, And I think that they were trying to tell like a driving Miss Daisy, but reverse kind of thing. And then they embellished on a lot of the details. And I think if you're doing a biopic like that and you fudge details like that are so bad, I mean that I don't know how that doesn't just disqualify you. Like if it's an actual biopic, if it's a historical fiction and you like obviously you're like a Saving Private Ryan kind of thing, great, make up all the details you want to make up a good to give us the audience a good experience. But if you're telling somebody's life story, you can't just make shit up because it looks good. And I also understand how people are upset because it feels very racist. Like, well, because he's a white driver, we're going to make, we're doing the white guilt thing where like they were chummy, they were buddies and he accepted him for who he was and all that kind of stuff. And in reality, none of that was very true. So I can understand why people are mad about it, but I never did see it. So I can't score this one.
Well, it's a pretty average list of films, really. There's nothing that jumps out as being terribly snubbed. Roma was beautiful to look at, but not especially cohesive as a film. I mean, you can poke holes in basically everything on that list, so it's kind of a win by default. So I don't know why this gets so much hate.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Green Book, and it's probably better than most of these movies. It's not especially great or anything. I actually didn't know that it was based on a true story. I'd probably dislike it more if I knew that. But honestly, the performances are pretty good. There are things to like about it, and some of the music scenes are great. Some of the music in that is excellent. So I'll probably just give this one a 1. It's fine. No need for the hate.
Yeah, I give it a 0.
All right.
I was leaning towards Roma, but no, I can see how they would have got. You know what I think happened? I think this is one of the things where each of these films maybe got like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12%, and this is just the film that got 13%, you know?
Yeah. So number 15, dun dun dun, Rami Malik, Best Actor 2019 for Bohemian Rhapsody. Oh man, I'm just gonna go straight away. This is a 5 for me. I think this was horrendous. I think this is a Razzies level performance. It's very over the top. It's very caricaturish. He looks ridiculous. He's nothing like Freddie Mercury. If you look at interviews of Freddie Mercury is a much more relaxed, much more social, chilled out guy. This is character assassination. It's just one of the worst on-screen adaptations of a real person. He just doesn't get it. He doesn't get Freddie Mercury at all. He plays a very cliched, I think I called it in one of my videos, I referred to this as a lovesick, damaged boy cliche. It's very one note. I can't stand this performance. I hate it. So I'm giving this a 5.
So I didn't see this one, so I looked up clips of it, and it is bad. I mean, it's very overacted. It's very bad. I have seen interviews with Mercury, and I agree with you that like it's I'm not seeing the same person. So it's a bad depiction of a historical figure. I would give it a higher, but I haven't seen the entire movie, so I'm going to go with a 3 just based on the clips that I saw. How about you, Echo?
It's the wrong kind of camp. Like, it's a kind of squirmy, stilted kind of camp, whereas Freddie Mercury had a more kind of appealingly endearing kind of queenly kind of camp. So Rami Malik just got it kind of wrong. Like, he could ape the movements, and he could copy when he needed for the live performances and stuff, but otherwise, no, it looks a little kooky, and he's too bug-eyed and kind of strange in an off kind of way that doesn't evoke the charisma of this character. He's not sympathetic the way that if you saw, or maybe someone met Freddie Mercury, you'd get it, and you'd be sympathetic towards him, and he'd have that charm to him. Whereas this is just slightly off. It's more like that robot, Mr. Robot kind of deal than a beloved musical icon.
He's a good cast for Mr. Robot.
Yeah. So 3.
All right. And so the last one we're going to discuss is Women Talking, Best Adapted Screenplay 2022. Beats
well,
Top
this is
Gun
a
Maverick.
masterpiece. Greg, you'd agree that this is a charming, sweeping, genre-defying masterpiece that really puts men in their place and puts modern feminism stylishly and cleverly in the context of a historical period piece, loosely attached to real-life circumstances. That I think the most affecting thing for me, and the most profound, is like zeroing in on like 12 or 13-year-old boys and saying that already within their masculinity there's a precociousness which is already dangerous. So I think that's the most important message for me. And so making it so that simultaneously making it that masculinity is socially constructed and therefore destructive, but is also innate and inherently destructive. So having those two things mushed together in an incoherent way, I think for me is spellbinding.
I think something that really stuck out to me, I actually had to watch it multiple times because
we should have watched it together. We should have watched it.
That's what really got me, because the first time I watched it, I thought, okay, this is just like a fun period piece. We're just talking about the Amish, and it really didn't strike me the messaging about the masculinity being dangerous and stuff really was not apparent my first viewing, because it's so subtle, and that I think is
very
subtextual about the writing.
Swept up in the cinematography, and so the layers go over you the first time. It's like Oppenheimer, you know?
Yeah. So. Well, and the coloring just had me so excited. Like, it just had me feeling just happy, so I didn't notice some of the darker elements that were, subtextual. It was incredible. An achievement. Epic, really.
Yeah. So I feel empowered just talking about it.
Is anyone giving this anything less than a 5?
No.
In fact, shouldn't we technically it's kind of like Eisenhower? You need to give it like a 6-star general, so it can.
All right. So here's the deal. You got you got a 3-way tie. We've got to
listen up, because you've got to break the tie.
Yeah, there is a menage a trois for first place. So you've got Women Talking for Best Adapted Screenplay. You've got Crash for Best Picture somehow, and then you've got A Beautiful Mind for Best Picture. So Beautiful Mind, Best Picture; Crash, Best Picture; and Women Talking, Best Adapted Screenplay. We'll let the chat sort this one out here.
All
Which
right,
of
so
those do you
chat,
we're voting who's the worst, right?
who's the worst? Yeah, chat. So you've got women talking, Crash, or A Beautiful Mind. So yeah, you can put in your answers. I'll have a look. I keep seeing women talking. Punkle says women talking. Dennis Keohane says women talking. Tai Fung says women talking. Doc Glock says I still say Crash.
Mhm.
Real.
So it's women talking. It's women
A real
talking.
Sophie choice.
It's pretty much unanimous in the chat. Almost that it's women talking. So women talking is officially the worst Oscar win of all time. Someone please inform Sarah Polly.
Excellent. Well done. Well done,
Right.
woman talking.
All right,
Had
so
to-
we're
had to
moving
really
on now
pull out
to
stuff.
we're moving on to Anatomy of a Fall. So I know you love this one, Echo.
Yeah. I love the fact that it came out of nowhere and it's essentially on its own terms as a film. Its central conceit that it could be either way. Essentially, most people will feel that she's innocent in that thing, but then you've also got the third dynamic interwoven into it, which is that the court might not feel that way. So you've got those two things balanced and interchanged. It's just mature, and it gets into the nitty-gritty of adult relationships that have festered over a long time that suddenly erupt, and in a way that it has that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? That special kind of energy of people who are mature and grown up and educated who are seething at each other, and their language becomes almost incoherent and tripping over itself. An extraordinary performance from the kid, whose literal physical environment is extremely compromised and constrained, and his familial environment is also extremely compromised and constrained. So an extraordinary, poignant vulnerability from him, delivered extremely well. And so I just thought it was pitch perfect, exquisitely balanced, beautifully rendered, great performances across the board. So just a pleasant surprise, and it's gratifying to be respected as a viewer when a film comes out like this. So very happy with it, although not particularly happy that my video review of it only got 3,000 views, but it's a different story.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I think it's just not on a lot of people's radar, and it is sad. I agree with you that it's excellent. I have another one that I do think is my pick for winner, but this is on the short list. This one, Holdovers, and my third one there. I thought it was excellent, and something that kept striking me as I was watching it was, why am I interested? Like, there is no story, right? And that's something that I thought was so successful about it, is when I reflected on the movie, I was like, you know what? There was no story, really, but I was completely engaged with this movie the entire time. And I think that's an achievement all in and of itself, because the movies that I'm normally used to watching, there's a villain, there's a setup, right? There's obvious story arcs, there's action that goes on. And this didn't have any of that. I mean, really, you're talking about you're shooting inside the house, inside the courtroom, and then, in a small area outside the house. So you've got very limited resources, and just the amount that they got done with that. And they kind of, I don't want to say it was like a mystery, like they kept you guessing, but they did keep introducing new pieces of information that kind of made you second guess things. I think, I don't want to spoil the ending. I thought the ending was actually, at first I was disappointed in the ending. And then I thought, no, I think this was I think it was the correct way to go at the end. And all the way around, I was just impressed by how much I was enjoying this movie. And I thought the performances were cool. I know I told you on your video, something that sort of added a bit of a layer was, in America, her something that foreigners comment on a lot about Americans is that we're overly nice, like to the point where we're untrustworthy in a lot of countries, especially in Germanic and Slavic countries, where our smiling and our constant happy attitude and all that shit, apparently in a lot of countries, it's like off-putting. Like, people find that very untrustworthy. And so I thought it was very interesting that you brought up how her attitude feels kind of cold. And it's even more so in America. Like, her attitude is like, almost like, oh my God, she's a cold-blooded killer. And then you step back and you're like, no, she's German. And she brings that up in the movie, that she, during their argument, she brings up that, I have a hard time, like you think you're the victim, but I have a hard time living in your hometown, and I have to smile at everybody, I have to be nice to everybody, and they hate me because I don't do that. And it was kind of a reminder that, yeah, she's she's very European in that blunt kind of way that some people find to be rude, but really it's just normal. And I thought that was very interesting how they kind of played on that.
And also latently, at a latent level, there's this extra dynamic where she's a successful novelist with a kind of bohemian tinge. And so she kind of has to feel that I don't have to account for this. This is my lifestyle, and it's being under public scrutiny. But no, I'm happy. I don't like my life to be conventional, and I'm out of the norms in this way and that way. And that's almost being held to account at a slight level as well, which I think is interesting. With the ending wasn't like a huge revelation or anything like that, but the ending was, crucially, it was cathartic. So like someone was saying about There Will Be Blood, that you could write the ending of that film 100 different ways and they would all suck. And the way that film ends in a kind of weird petering out kind of way is exactly the right way. And I think the same thing with this film. You could write the ending 100 different ways and they would all suck. And this was the right cathartic ending for it.
Yeah, I was waiting for like a Primal Fear ending. I was waiting for at the very end a scene where, she just suddenly turns it on and is like, damn right, I murdered his ass.
Yeah.
But
there's a board behind the judge's head. There's like a board full of like pinned up pictures and stuff, and she's just been reading off that the whole time, and then she's Kaiser Soze.
Yeah. I was waiting for a big twist, but I think that would have been disastrous. I think it's cool. I mean, I was like, it would be cool, but it would have been terrible. You're absolutely right. It would have been a horrible ending for it. And I think the way they went about it was very, very good.
Yeah, it would have cheapened it. The other thing about Anatomy of a Fall as well is the performances are brilliant. This is just an absolute powerhouse of acting. What's her name? Miller, the woman?
Sandra Hüller.
Sandra Hüller. She's brilliant in this. The kid who plays the blind kid, he's excellent as well. Even the father, so he's only in one scene. It's a very long scene. It's an argument between the mother and the father, and they're arguing. And this is the day before he has his fatal fall or his fatal push. Who knows? You have to watch the movie. And that he's excellent. Like just that one performance. The other thing I really liked about the movie, there are elements of it which are they're unlikable on an aesthetic level, not on an artistic level, but aesthetically they're very grating. And the director of the movie knows that they're unlikable, but they put it in the movie anyway because the director respects the intelligence of the audience. And I'll give a couple of examples. So the music at the start, the father is doing some work in the attic. He's doing some DIY, and a journalist visits the house to do an interview with this novelist woman. And the father is blasting this music, and it's really horrible music. It's very ear grating. It's very piercing. It's very repetitive. It's just awful to listen to. And he's doing this to impose his presence on the house and to impose his presence on the guest in this very nasty, passive aggressive way. And it's very aesthetically hideous to listen to, but the movie lets it play and lets it play and lets it play. Because it wants to elicit that from the viewer, and it respects the viewer enough to understand that this extremely unpleasant aesthetic is a very, very important part of the movie. And also it knows that the main character, the character that has been accused here of murdering her husband, she's very unlikable. She's a somewhat entitled, sort of run-of-the-mill bohemian middle-class European feminist. That's the type that I don't think I would be able to last 5 minutes without getting into some sort of heated argument, because we would disagree on literally everything. Just the kind of person who a lot of people would hate. And she also has a kind of unlikability about her. The actress plays it very well. But you're not supposed to like these characters. Even the father's very unlikable. When you get that scene where he's arguing and he seems very prickly and he seems very negative and, to be honest, kind of like a pussy, to be blunt about it. So you don't like these characters. The only character you particularly like is the kid, who's caught up in the middle of all this. You feel a lot of sympathy for him, and you're really drawn to him emotionally. So it's a brilliant movie in terms of what it elicits and what it emotionally elicits from the viewer. It probably is the best movie here. I would say. I don't think it was a great year for movies. Overall, I think it was, at the low end, it was absolutely horrendous. It was probably the worst year ever. But at the high end, I don't think there's that much great stuff. but I would say this is either the best or the second best movie of the year. Anatomy of a Fall is terrific.
You know, something else that really, as I was watching the movie, I was thinking about it wasn't, I don't think it was aiming for this, but something else that it kind of brought up was this idea of how we get fed like one moment from somebody's life or a couple's life or whatever. They have this argument, they play this recording of this argument the day before he dies, and even the woman is like, this is unfair that basically this recording is the last thing that anybody knows we ever said to each other, and this is how it's all framed, right? And I thought that was very interesting because, you know, we do this all the time with celebrity news. I know a couple of years ago, or maybe it was last year, there's like this right-wing YouTube guy, Steven Crowder. I don't know what his first name is. But he, you know, he had a very public divorce, and there was this footage that was released of like a Ring camera from their back door, and it was him and his wife arguing, and she's pregnant, and you know, he's really being a dick. But it was interesting. The discourse around that was very interesting because a lot of people, it was like a 2-year-old clip. So somebody had, obviously the wife had held on to this clip, and then, you know, it got released somehow, and people were like, you know, was it staged? Did she stage it and make him mad just so he would be caught on camera, or is he really that way all the time? Or and there was a lot of that same discourse of like, we got a 2-3 minute slice of this couple's life, and it might have been the worst day. One of them is wrong, maybe both of them are wrong, we don't know. But I think that was an interesting part that kind of got touched on a lot in the movie as well, that she's like, look, we had this argument, but it doesn't mean shit. I mean, we could have had the most passionate sex ever that night, but nobody sees or hears that. They only hear this one portion, and now I have to live with that. And that was very interesting.
I like the interspersing of extra sort of visual material, the photographs from their past, like the deliberately grainy light shot photos from parties, that kind of thing, as they're growing and changing, the different gradings. So if you see through the very practical, almost clinical dissertation camera footage, which is very stark, and then you'll have the reenactment footage, which is also very different visual fields and very kind of grainy. So they all worked collectively very well to just give the narrative visually some more interesting elements interspersed throughout. I thought that was handled very well as well.
Yeah. Now there's 10 movies here, so we can't talk about every single one of them. We just don't have enough time. I was planning to skip Poor Things unless one of you two want to say anything about that. I haven't seen it as well.
No, I haven't
seen it. No, none of us have seen it.
I don't think it's out. It's not out in a lot of places, even in cinema. The other one is The Zone of Interest.
At the end of the year.
Zone of Interest.
Well, I want to dwell on The Zone of Interest for a little bit because I thought this thing is incredible. It's utterly astonishing. It's based off it. It should win the Oscar for Best Adapted Material because it comes from a novel by, can't remember his name, but it's basically the host family who had their home right literally abutting the fence or the wire structured wall to Auschwitz, and they lived their life in this kind of weird sonic medium of mass slaughter. And the sound is very crucial to this film because you have this family just domestically going about its business. And in the background, you'll hear the crackle of gunfire. You'll hear smothered, subdued shouts. You'll hear barked instructions. And you'll hear these horrible industrial noises of generators, of unaccountable sounds woven together. And sometimes the sounds of domesticity, like a child crying in the background, will be interspersed with this as well. So it kind of throws you off. And so you're living in this medium, and to have this atrocity, this industrial slaughter going on day and night, just off the screen with this sonic template swirling in the background, is utterly haunting, gripping, and visceral. Then they expand the film, so you'll have like the smog coming up of ash in the background. You'll have sometimes the sky through the curtains at night has this orange glow, and there's a subplot of a girl who, based on a true story, who would just forages apples and then goes into the camp and puts them into the earth where the workers are laboring the next day. And it's shot at night in a kind of like that Silence of the Lambs ending kind of footage where Clarice is in the dark, and it's kind of like that. And so it becomes powerful, beautiful to look at. Other sequences are very subterranean, where Hurst is walking through tunnels underneath, and he's saying farewell to a horse, which is lit up starkly, almost like a Caravaggio. So it's exquisite. Jonathan Glazer, who gave us Under the Skin or Beneath the Skin, that really haunting, strange film from about 10 years ago. So I want everyone to see this film because I think it's a masterpiece, and I probably might even be my best Oscar pick because it's profound, incredibly stark, beautifully rendered, and based off great source material.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this one of interest. I think it's a terrific movie. It doesn't go for the cheap and easy option of simply depicting the Nazis as monstrously evil monsters who did monstrous things because they were monsters. It very much shows them as just normal people who are doing a job that they are ideologically driven to do. Like the Commandant Huss is very much just a banal kind of very talented logistician and bureaucrat. He's very, very good at it. Like, one thing the movie shows is the efficiency and the proficiency with which the Germans engaged in genocide. It's very tempting to depict them as monsters, but this movie, it doesn't do that. It uses, also the direction is very, very nice and functional. I was talking earlier about how the direction of Maestro imposes itself on the viewer. The direction here is very clean and clear, and you can see everything. There's lots of nice wide shots. The director is very fond of big wide shots that shows the character's full surroundings. So they're walking up a hallway into a room. He'll just have the camera at the back of the room. It's a very nicely filmed, functional movie where you can see everything that's going on. And he wants you to see this. He wants you to see the full span of these people's very lovely domestic bliss in the midst of this horror. Brilliantly directed, because that's a great example of a movie that is well directed because it doesn't impose itself on the viewer. It does what it needs to do, and it doesn't do any more than that. The
camera work, a very intense focus on symmetry. So symmetrical blocks and rectangles resolving into symmetrical shapes. Obviously, visual kind of metaphorically for the regime and for this guy's dull, stupid, functional mind. Things tend to resolve into darkness, so things will go into black. And the sequences towards the end, when he's walking through those staircases and everything is symmetrical, and often you see him as an isolated figure, receding some way or disappearing one way or another. And just when he's retching to himself towards the very end, and then it has those end sequences, which I won't describe, but beautifully thought and beautifully rendered as a great conclusion to it. So I loved this film.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about Oppenheimer a lot, and we don't have a ton of time, but did any of you think that it deserves to win?
I think it might, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I thought as far as biopics go, I thought it was very interesting. I think that Nolan's choice to frame it as not just, all right, here's the biopic, like we're going to go through. I think his choice of framing of the investigation in the room, and then also cutting to Robert Downey Jr.'s confirmation hearing, I thought that was a great choice because it provides context to what is going on in Oppenheimer's life without having to do these really shitty exposition dialogue dumps. So we can cut to Downey Jr. and his aide asking him, or the congressman asking him, what was your relationship to Oppenheimer? Why did you do this or whatever, right? And then he can give a little answer, and then we cut to that portion of his life. So we have some context to why that portion of his life is important. We get a little bit of background without having to do this really, really shitty dialogue. So I thought that was a really good choice. But I'm going to take this opportunity to grandstand again. I've been called a Puritan for this, but I'm pissed at this movie for Florence Pugh's tits being out multiple times, because I thought it was a great movie. And I want to show this movie to my kids. I wanted to watch this with them because I thought it was a cool historical piece. Here's, American historical information. Here, kids, this is what a great movie looks like. This is really well done. Like, there are a lot of things we could talk about. Very interesting. And Nolan was thirsty for Florence's boobs for some fucking reason. It added nothing to the movie. It's a pet peeve of mine personally that, excessive graphic visuals get used to sell a film. And I thought Christopher Nolan was better than that. I really thought that he could get this stuff done without. I thought every single scene where her tits were out could have been accomplished with her having a shirt or a robe or whatever on. And it just felt gratuitous and stupid and immature. And I'm really, really mad about that, because otherwise I thought it was a really great movie.
I don't think the tits out was gratuitous, because I think the point that he was making was that And the reason she was naked was that, so this is Oppenheimer's mistress. He's got his wife and then he's got his mistress, and his mistress always has her tits out. And I think the reason for that is because Nolan wanted to make the point that Oppenheimer was completely at home with this woman, that there was no pretense between them. There was no hiding of characteristics. They didn't really have to hide who they really were. They could just be entirely themselves. They're so themselves when they're with each other that they can be literally naked with each other and not have to worry about how they're being judged. And whereas when Oppenheimer goes back to Los Alamos and he's with his wife, there's a lot of pretense there, and he does have to play the role of the father and the husband, and it is very difficult for him. So I think that's what Nolan was getting at. I don't think it was gratuitous meaning like just it's tits for the sake of tits and there's no real meaning to it. I do think it had meaning within the film. And you could argue that it was excessive, that there was too much of it, and he really only needed to do that in one scene. But I felt it was good for that reason. And I generally agree that nudity in movies is usually just gratuitous, but in this case, I thought it was artistically well rendered.
I mean, I see your point, and I think the only scene that I thought was any good was when she was writing him in the investigation room, because it was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable to, I thought it was an interesting cut to slide around one character and see him sitting there. He's clothed on one side, he's naked on the other, showing that he feels very exposed in this moment, in this investigation. And then, they cut to Florence Pugh on top of him, and she's, locking eyes with Emily Blunt, and it's all very uncomfortable, and it's showing how she feels like while they're discussing this, that's all she can think about. I just feel like they could have done it without having her boobs out, and then it would have been, you would have had more audience there. And I've had commenters talk about this, that, teachers are like, I would love to show this in class. I would love to show, the scientific achievement, the historical part of it, all that kind of stuff. But, we just have this flat out full frontal nudity. And so I can't show this. And I think that detracts from it. It's sad.
Well, I want to pass this out and say Florence Pugh's tits per se, exceptional, but their context and usage.
She looks great. Yeah.
The deployment of the tits is what I have a problem with. And I agree with you, like gratuitous in the sense, literally gratuitous, but also gratuitous as a directorial choice, like jarringly gratuitous in that wider sense. In the deposition room, her writing him and looking at the other actress, it's gratuitous in its development as an idea. It's Nolan who's aware and has been pestered for 10 years about not being, emotionally visceral enough or expressive enough, and him trying to overcompensate in that in an overwrought way that just falls flat, doesn't work, and is kind of awkward. I didn't like this film the first time I watched it, but when I watched it the second time, my estimation of it rose quite a great deal. So I don't love this film, but I expect it will win because, in a weird kind of way, in retrospect, if it didn't win, it would look weird because everyone will go, Oppenheimer, of course. So I don't love it, but I expect it'll win, and I can see how and why it would win.
Yeah, I mean, my overall opinion of it, I only saw it once in the cinema, and I'm aware that I need to see it again because that's how Nolan's movies works, especially maybe this dance with this much going on. And if there is a criticism I have of the movie, it's that it's a bit all over the place. It is very dense. It does take some getting into, but I definitely need to see it again before I make any final judgments on it.
Greg, there are versions overseas, I think, in the Thai market or in some places in the Middle East, where they put a CGI black dress on Florence Pugh in some of those scenes.
I've heard about that.
So just download the Thai version and show that to your kids.
There we go.
Yeah, I will say, though, I think it had the best score of the year. I think the music for Oppenheimer is excellent.
Not when you're in the cinema. You're just getting blasted by like a machine gun fire of percussion throbbing at you. God damn.
That was yeah, I'm sure the stomping scenes were rough. You know what? I forgot this. I love the score of the Holdovers. I forgot that was something I liked about that movie. The 70s music and the original music and stuff was great. But yeah, I can see how the stomping of the feet in Oppenheimer would have been quite deafening.
The last one is Killers of the Flower Moon. Have you seen that?
Yeah,
I haven't yet. I only watched one 3-hour movie thus far. I don't have room yet for another one. I'm gonna get it.
It's 3.5 hours. Yeah, a lot to take in with that movie. What were your thoughts, Echo?
I loved it when I watched it, but it has kind of the inverse effect of Oppenheimer, where Oppenheimer, I couldn't find my feet with it the first time around, but loved it the second time around, and it lingered in the mind. Whereas with this, I loved it the first time I watched it. The time wasn't an issue for me. Had interesting ambiguities in it, an interesting period to explore. But it didn't linger, especially in the mind afterwards. It kind of dissipated and faded pretty quickly. It's in that top tier of Scorsese. Um, I wouldn't say it was especially overwhelmingly compelling. It has that Scorsese thing where long stretches of time can go by in people's lives, and then there's kind of strange lulls, and then we have to sort of figure out where we are now with them and reorientate ourselves to the characters over these long spans, and then events happen. So it can kind of lose its coherence and momentum and just be stretched a little and lack a sort of tautness in that respect. But it was beautifully shot. Lily Gladstone was great with a kind of a vulnerable, again, use that word, dissipated kind of grace to her, which I thought was remarkable. So everyone did fine. Everyone did great. A good film. And if Oppenheimer wasn't there, it would probably win. So yeah, it's sort of mid upper tier for Scorsese and in this pack of contenders.
Yeah, Killers of the Flower Moon. It's a good movie. It'll probably take several sittings to watch it because it is that bloody long. But yeah, it really needs its the performances by Leonardo DiCaprio and in particular Robert De Niro. I thought Robert De Niro was excellent in it. They're very, very good, and the movie really needs them because there's so much screen time that you do need a very commanding actor to keep you from getting bored, and not these long scenes. There are bits of it that are odd though and don't quite gel. For example, there's one scene where Leonardo DiCaprio was taken into a room of what do you call that cult? Robert De Niro he's involved in this cult, but it's only in the movie for a few minutes, despite being 3.5 hours long. It's only mentioned once. Masons. He's a Mason. He's taken into a room, and it turns out that Robert De Niro was a Mason, and he beats Leonardo DiCaprio with a wooden paddle. But the Mason thing never comes up again. Its symbolism is used. Mason symbols are used at different parts of the movie, but it's only actually mentioned once, which is bizarre. It's like, you could have just cut that scene out of the movie and it would have been a better movie because it raises issues that are never resolved. It really is strange.
And where is this gigantic black and white tiled room? Exactly. It's so strange.
Yeah, it's just he walks into this massive room that seems to be there solely for the purpose of Masons, and he gets beat, and then it's never mentioned again. It's just odd. Yeah. It's so strange. It's
very incongruous.
It's very incongruous. It's almost like a dream sequence, but it's not a dream sequence.
It's like something out of David Lynch, Strange.
It is something out of David Lynch. It's really bizarre. Other than that, it's pretty. Go ahead, Echo.
So just probably too sprawling, the film, I think, trying to capture the wide epic of these lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think the mistake, it's not a great movie, and I think if there is a major mistake here, it's that Scorsese's trying to focus on too much. He's trying to capture the entirety of this era and this time period in this particular place when he should just be focusing on the more intimate aspects. It's a movie which requires intimacy, not grand scope, I think.
Yeah.
But it's
same
still
thing with The Irishman.
Yeah. I actually couldn't make it through The Irishman. It bored the hell out of me, and I couldn't get over that weird de-aging. It was really bothering me.
Yeah, wasn't quite there.
All right, so yeah, I guess that's it, but let's just briefly go over what was the best movie of 2023. Oscars or no Oscars, what do you think was the best movie of 2023? I mean, for me, probably my favorite movie was Tetris. I've seen that twice now, and I just think it's terrific. And I understand it's not exactly high art, pretentious statement as that is, but I just think it's a terrific movie. It's fun. It's got a lot of stuff going on. It's got great characters, very well paced, and I just don't think it was a good year. I think even at the high end, there are things wrong with pretty much all of these, except The Zone of Interest and The Anatomy of a Fall. But those are very, very niche, very artsy movies. They're almost movies that are to be admired more so than enjoyed. I think I stole that from you, by the way, Echo, that phrase. So yeah, what about you guys? What do you think was the best of the year?
I'm gonna go you're right, like nothing in my mind is just like, yes, this is incredible. I think for what it represents, I'm going to go with the Spider-Verse movie, because I think that a big pet peeve that I have is that animation is looked down upon, and people look at animation like a genre when really it's a medium, and there's a lot you can do with it. It has a lot of uses, and I think a lot of Hollywood and a lot of adults just think, oh, well, animation, that's for kids. And that's completely untrue. And I think that what Spider-Verse is doing is changing people's minds about what can be done with animation, what kind of stories can be told with animation, and its use as a medium. And so hopefully it starts to break down that barrier of people thinking, oh, cartoon animation, that's for kids. So I'm going to pick that one.
Well, I want a film where you have multiple lives that interchange and often swap. And if that can be facilitated by someone having a bracelet they receive in the mail, which then can kick off sequences of lives that interchange and powers interchange. And if you have a powerful villain, perhaps called Darben, who also has like a clippable bracelet that she can put on, that then enables the interchangeability of these complex stories of complex women, then I think that's going to very subtly create the template for a story that I think could even possibly transcend the one we were talking about before. But aside from that, I think that the Zone of Interest at the 11th hour pips it for me. I think it's a complete, stylistically complete film. And for Sandra Hüller to be nominated for to be involved in 2 best films is an extraordinary achievement. So fuck Taylor Swift getting a Time Magazine Person of the Year. It should have been Sandra Hüller.
Yeah, so there you have it from Echo. His favorite is Zone of Interest, followed very closely by The Marvels.
Mm-hmm.
So I will just head over to the super chat here before we round things off. So Dan James gave me £10. Thank you very much, Dan. And he says, we'll look forward to watching this later. Sadly, the call of civil engineering means I need to sleep. Hopefully this shows some respect. Sleep is for pussies, man. All right. You need to watch some fucking red pill content. Greg knows all about this shit. I get up every fucking day at 4 a.m. and start my day with 300 push-ups. All right. Did you know that the average millionaire gets up at 4 a.m.? You fucking pussy. All right.
That's right.
These fucking assholes, man. What the fuck?
You know what? That guy, his wife is probably making him go to sleep because women are only there to run your life into the ground. Marriage is an absolute scam that is only there to steal your time and your money. Go your own ways, boys.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the oversight and safety of bridges and overpasses. All right, so just forget your logistics and spend time with us. Get your priorities right.
All right, so Buck's Basement gives me $2. Thank you very much, Buck's Basement. Would love a One Piece LA versus Avatar LA video. I think Greg's your man for that.
Live action.
Greg, what are your thoughts on live action Avatar?
I have only watched 2 episodes thus far. I'm going to watch one more, and I'm going to do a video this week, and the video is going to be about, like, it's okay to just not finish it. I'm not going to finish Avatar. It's not that great. The animation is wonderful. It is, if you guys haven't seen it, it's an excellent show. It's very deep and complex. I mean, like, people see it and they think, oh, it's very childish. It appeared on Nickelodeon. They're very deep themes, excellent dialogue, excellent directing. I mean, really very, very good show. Very good story. And the live action was never going to be anywhere close to it. I think I watched it out of morbid curiosity just to see, like, what will they do? Okay, it looks interesting. Yeah, the special effects look interesting, but it just isn't, it isn't the same. And what you're going to see a lot online this week is it's better than the 2010 movie by M. Night Shyamalan, which is like me beating a toddler in a foot race. Like, that's just nothing to brag about. But also, it's just not as good as the original cartoon. So it's just going to be in this weird limbo. And in a couple of weeks, we'll forget about it. And it'll be like, oh, yeah, they did do a live action. That's interesting. Whereas One Piece is an achievement because it condensed hundreds of episodes of a well-loved anime into a live action that made sense. The structure of those episodes is something that I can't stop talking about. It blew me away how they structured the episodes. It was a real achievement. And I think Avatar is going to be quickly forgotten. It's going to be a fun little thing that we talk about this week, and then that'll be it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I think One Piece was my favorite TV show of 2023. It was one of the very few things that I really loved in 2023.
Yeah, it was outstanding.
Spooky Ghost gives me $2. Thank you, Spooky Ghost. Sad the movie wasn't a true reflection of themes. I'm not sure which movie you're referring to. DSP, Historical Society, $2. Thank you. Why is Echo trying to convince us he reads books? Yeah, come on. We know you're fronting, Echo. We know you don't really. We know you haven't really read any of those books. In fact, they're not even books. It's just like a printout. Yeah, it's just wallpaper.
Green screen.
DSP, Historical Society gives me $5. Thank you, DSP. LOL, I see that background, Mr. Echo. I get it. You're literate. Don't need to show off.
Yeah, I wrote all those books myself. I authored all of them.
And Despot, are you going to be on EFAP? I doubt it. I think EFAP is the roster's pretty full. They have the rotation, and I think that's that. So Shane68, $10. Thanks for the great conversation, gentlemen. You're very welcome, and thank you for the $10. Tyrant of Connacht. Nice. Nice. I wonder where you got that name. I dubbed myself Tyrant of Connacht in your honor. Thank you very much, Tyrant of Connacht. I love the name. And Mo Sislak gives me $20. What did you think about Cinderella Man? I think Cinderella Man's a great movie. It's one of the few biopics. I was calling it biopics in my videos for a while, but fuck it, I'm going to go back to how I was originally saying it. I'm going to call it biopics from now on. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, what's his name? The main actor in Cinderella Man.
Russell
like
Crowe.
he went full in on the training and everything, and he actually like messed up his arm or his shoulder in training and everything. So he just had to power through, otherwise the film wouldn't work. So I'll give him credit for that.
Yeah, I just love that story. I love that story of overcoming adversity in a very difficult time, and I like boxing as well. And so it's the kind of movie that's made for me. I love it, and I haven't seen it in a while, but it's terrific. Renee Zellweger is very good in it, and I love Paul Giamatti and Russell Crowe. I love the bromance between them. That's an element of the movie that often gets overlooked because they're so focused on the boxing, or they're so focused on the period that central bromance often gets overlooked, and that's one aspect of the movie that I really love. So big fan of Cinderella Man. Yeah. All right, guys. So that is it for the stream. Thank you very much to everyone who listened, and thank you to the chat for officially making Women Talking the worst ever Oscar win. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. And thank you very much to Echo Chamberlain and Greg Owen for taking the time to do the stream with me.
Thanks, gents. Appreciate it as always.
All right. Bye-bye.